Okay, everybody, we're ready. How's it going? Your Joravsky show for Tuesday, September 10th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for helping bring back the Joravsky show. First up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150, and of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago of Labor. Sorry for the delay, everybody. The Joravsky show starts now. It is Tuesday, September 10th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Joravsky show. Today on the program, our Chicago Reader colleague Maya Dukmasova will join us. We're talking Ideas Week with Vanessa Buenger, and we welcome community activist Lavonte Stewart. And now your host, he's got so many ideas every week, Chicago Reader columnist Joravsky.
Hello everybody, Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Some Things Never Change Tuesday. Happy back from the weekend, everybody. You have a good weekend, D?
Ben, you may want to change your microphone. I can't hear you.
Oh.
Well, 1 second. We're live, everybody. I'm just going to throw you a new mic.
All right. This is the microphone they gave me, huh?
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Stand by, everybody.
Were you able to hear it okay?
Not really.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Okay.
Try this one.
All right, let's see. All right. Good God. You know, that's what happens when we let other people in the studio on the weekend, right, D?
Yeah.
All right, let's just blame it on unnamed other people. They switched the microphone on me. That was pretty slick. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yes, we're calling this Some Things Never Change Tuesday, right? I was telling everybody I had a great weekend. I asked you, did you have a good weekend? You said, no, I didn't have a good weekend.
No, I didn't say that. It was okay.
It was okay. And then you also said, Ben, it's Tuesday. Stop talking about the weekend, all right? Although I have to say this, I saw a good movie. Just want to give a shout out. Brittany Runs a Marathon. Not the greatest movie in the world, but I loved it very dearly. I watched a bunch of football games, and I just want to make this observation. I saw a lot of good quarterbacks and a lot of outstanding kickers. So therefore, it is apparently possible for a football team to get this, to have a good quarterback and have a good kicker. I know this must be a stunning revelation to my beloved Chicago Bears, who've decided to play football for the last several years without a good kicker or a good quarterback. Here you go, folks. Yeah, fellas, you could have had Patrick Mahomes. You could have. Wait, you know what, D? It's not a sports talk show. Let me just put that aside.
Thank you.
Anyway, folks, I've still not got over the trauma of last Thursday's humiliating Bears opener where they got humiliated by the Green Bay Packers. Let's move on to politics, all right? Woke up today, and what did I see? Well, actually, I saw it on Sunday when I woke up. Stories in the Sun-Times, excellent stories in the Sun-Times about the rise and fall of Reverend Leon Finney. Now, a lot of you youngsters out there, I know my millennial listeners are going to need a little history lesson about Leon Finney. It's a very Chicago story. Leon Finney was a very powerful community activist at one point on the south side of Chicago and became a very important power broker on the south side of Chicago. He was one of the leaders of the Woodlawn Organization, which is a legendary community group in the Woodlawn neighborhood, which is just south of Hyde Park. He himself was trained by Saul Alinsky. Who is Saul Alinsky, my young listeners ask? Well, I'll tell you who Saul Alinsky is. Saul Alinsky is basically the person who created modern community organizing. He wrote 2 textbooks on the subject back in the 60s, Reveille for Radical and Rules for Radical. He was a Chicago-born and bred activist and thinker, and he laid out certain rules that are still being followed to this day. Number 1 rule: when you're a community activist, when you're an activist of any kind, you personify a problem. You don't talk about a problem in its abstract. So if you have a problem with rundown buildings, you don't talk in the abstract about like a rundown building or how our systems breed inequity in financing apartments. No, you take the landlord who owns the building and you put his picture on a board or a billboard or a placard and you wave it around. That's how you do it. You personify the issue. Republicans, by the way, picked up from Saul Alinsky. They use these tactics. We just saw it for the last 4 years with Governor Bruce Rauner, who attempted to personify all the ills in the state of Illinois in the face of Michael Joseph Madigan. It worked for about 1 election cycle, but after that it crashed and burned. Nobody bought it. But anyway, when Bruce Rauner was doing that, whether he wanted to acknowledge it or not, he was learning a trick of the trade that had been established by and put into a book by Saul Alinsky. Anyway, Saul Alinsky trained Leon Finney way back when. And when I first moved to Chicago back in the early 80s, I remember seeing Leon Finney give a little talk, gave a speech. I think it was 1982, talking about community activism. And he was laying down some of the rules, such as personifying a problem, not just speaking about it in the abstract. And he also talked, and this is probably most important, about the need to be transactional. He didn't come out right out and say that, but he was talking about the need. You have a very concrete, specific request or demand that you make of city government. And then when city government grants it, you applaud the people in your organization. You give them credit for having the power to stand up and force the powers that be to make concessions. But if you start having that transitional attitude where you sort of swap, your favors for something in return from City Hall, pretty soon you become less of an outside group demanding change and more of an inside group exchange. And pretty soon you begin acting on behalf of the powers that be, and you really lose your outside status. And that has happened more or less to Leon Finney over the years. I can recall him standing up at press conferences for Mayor Rahm or Mayor Daley, just championing whatever they wanted him to champion and using whatever prestige he had as a community activist on the south side of Chicago, whatever prestige he had from his running the Woodlawn Organization for all these years, whatever he had for his connections to Saul Alinsky and the great legendary days of community organizing in the city of Chicago, he sort of transferred to whichever mayor needed it. And I recall him doing this in terms of standing up with mayors when they wanted to pay teachers less money, when they were championing bringing the Olympics to town and putting it in parks like Washington Park on the south side. And of course, most recently with the Obama Center, I remember Leon Finney speaking speaking up on behalf of putting the Obama Center. It ended up in Jackson Park, but at the time it was wide open whether it be Jackson Park or Washington Park. He busted in a whole bunch of people from the Woodlawn organization to the hearing at Hyde Park High School, and it was just like he was using the old tricks of the trade on behalf of a powerful mayor, Mayor Rahm Emanuel. So the outsider became the insider, and he began so used to cutting deals that apparently he started cutting corners, and he used his contacts with city government, with the mayor's office, county government, with the CHA to build up quite a portfolio of apartments that his organization ran. Turns out it's on the precipice of bankruptcy. It's actually in bankruptcy and falling apart. And the story in the Sun-Times says it all. I'm just going to read you this one portion. The Sun-Times shined a light on a federal judge's stunning allegations of fraud, self-dealing, and mismanagement against Finney's former not-for-profit. Lori Lightfoot weighed in. I read those articles. I was surprised. I mean, Leon Finney obviously had been an iconic person. When someone of his stature falls, clearly it's disappointing, Lori Lightfoot said. Yes, indeed. It's an old story in the city of Chicago. An outsider becomes an insider, starts cutting deals. Next thing you know, they start cutting corners as well. We got a great show today, everybody. Maya Dukmasova. Oh, God, I got a tough one with that name. Dukmasova will be in the studio. Maya, I don't know why I have such a hard time with Maya's name. Don't have a hard time talking to Maya. And we'll be talking about criminal justice issues. She got a lot of interesting things to say about how we elect judges in Cook County. So a lot of criminal justice issues to be discussed with Maya. Vanessa Buenger will be here. Ideas Week. We're talking all thing Ideas Week. Great ideas that you can learn from. And in the final part of the show, Lavonte Stewart will be here, a community activist, works for State Treasurer Michael Frerichs, very much involved in politics in the city of Chicago. We'll be probably talking about community criminal justice issues as well, Lavonte, and also politics. So plenty of political talk ahead of us. But before we do any of that, the doctor has the news.
Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Dennis. Sorry for the delayed start there, all of our YouTube live streamers. Having a case of the Tuesdays.
Yeah, it'll happen on a Tuesday. How about that microphone thing, huh? They swapped mics on me.
I'm just glad we fixed it that quick.
Well, I got to give you all the credit, man. You figured it out. It was like, I didn't tell you this, but my dryer didn't work the other day.
Your dryer didn't work?
Oh,
my God, who cares?
Well, it's kind of like the microphone, but...
All right, let's unpack the Chicago and Illinois news happening at the moment.
Did I tell you my dryer didn't work? Oh, sorry.
We got to keep the listeners.
Focus, Ben, focus.
I think dryer talk's going to reel them in, all right? Today on our Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker schedule, once again, no public events scheduled because he broke his femur.
Okay.
Ben, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to feel a little bad for JB.
All right.
Here he was only a month ago, capping off one hell of a summer, all right? What was he doing? Going all across the state, signing legislation left and right, partying at the state fair. Now he's hobbling around on a crutch like a pirate, cooped indoors in pain and cutting deals on the phone. Ben, you asked what I did over the weekend.
Yeah.
Well, I've been connecting the dots on this. Okay. That's right.
All right, the deep dive.
And maybe the folklores are true after all. Perhaps the curse lives on. That's right. I'm blaming that damn state fair butter cow.
It's the butter cow, which has 9 hearts to represent the 9 essential nutrients in milk. That's right. It's made entirely out of butter, and it's a state fair tradition since at least 1922.
Follow me here, okay?
1922.
Follow me, all right? What do we always say J.B. Pritzker is? Smooth as butter.
Oh, whoa.
And as soon as something more smooth comes along, like a life-size sculpture of a cow made out of butter, J.B. Pritzker breaks his femur.
I see. Wow, it's all coming clear.
And he's humbled right before our very eyes. Coincidence? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Wow, man. Haldeman, Ehrlichman, Mitchell, and Dean. It all has a pattern, if you dig what I mean.
All right.
What is that? I don't know.
Just saying, guys. Just saying.
Yeah, man.
Butter cow curse. I'm going to be... Throughout the week, I'm going to look into this.
All right, that's like
butter cow curse.
The Bulls have a curse, the Michael Jordan curse. Ever since they ran him out of town, they've had nothing but bad luck. Think about it.
I have a feeling we're going to get the scoop on this one. We're going to break the butter cow curse.
Did I tell you my dryer isn't working? Oh, sorry, man.
But there is actual news to discuss this afternoon, like the recent endorsement for Illinois Democratic 3rd Congressional District challenger Maureen Newman. If you aren't familiar with the political barn burner known as the Illinois 3rd Congressional District election, well, we'll catch you up here. Right now, the congressman in the 3rd Congressional District is a fellow named Dan Lipinski. He's a Democrat, but barely, all right? Not big on abortion rights. He's opposed to the $15 an hour minimum wage increase. Let's just say our friends over at Jacobin Magazine won't be writing any positive pieces on Lipinski anytime soon.
What's up, Micah? Yeah.
Now, last election, Lipinski was so close to losing his seat to candidate and actual Democrat in the year 2019, Marie Newman. Like, very close. And earlier in the year, you could hear a loud all the way from Lipinski's 3rd Congressional District office because Marie Newman announced that she's running against him again. Oh, yes, boy. And this time around, Newman is bringing in the help of Massachusetts Senator and 2020 presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren, as Elizabeth Warren just announced her endorsement for Marie Newman for Congress. Here's the statement from Elizabeth Warren. At a time when women's reproductive rights are under attack daily from Republican lawmakers across America, Illinoisans deserve a leader with an unwavering commitment to fighting for women's access to reproductive health care. Warren said Newman, quote, understands that this isn't a moment to back down. It's time to fight back. Marie will be a champion for working families and women across Illinois' 3rd District, making sure their voices are heard in Washington. Lipinski has responded to the Warren endorsement, and hey, at least he's not hiding the fact that he's basically a Republican, all right? Here's the quote from Lipinski, quote, Lipinski said Warren's announcement, quote, lamentably proves the point of Washington pundits that Warren has moved from independent fact-based thinking to ideological orthodoxy.
Okay.
My opponent has always been an ideologue. She has never focused on how she might serve the people of IL3, but has only parroted the talking points of radicals who would take away everyone's private health care, eliminate Medicare, and raise the taxes of hard-working middle-class families by tens of thousands of dollars. I have proven record. Okay, who cares? Ben Joravsky, does this endorsement from Warren help or hurt Marie Newman? And what do you think about her chances this time around? And those comments from Lipinski.
Yeah, well, okay, a little backdrop here. But yes, I think ultimately it helps her. It doesn't hurt her. I don't think any Danny Lipinski supporters will move from voting for Lipinski to Newman one way or another. But I'm trying to decipher what Lipinski was getting at. Let me just do a little backdrop here. Dan Lipinski is the son of William Lipinski, who is the congressman in the 3rd Congressional back in the 90s and the 80s. Before that, he was the alderman of the 23rd Ward, a powerhouse on the southwest side of the city of Chicago. At one point, I would argue that William Lipinski had more political power than Michael Joseph Madigan. Madigan obviously has eclipsed him since then. When William Lipinski decided he didn't want to be congressman anymore, he literally handed the position over to his son, Dan Lipinski, who had never really been involved in the day-to-day operations of the Lipinski organization and just pretty much took, I think he was a professor, of some kinds, I forget, political science professor, some kind of professor. Anyway, he became the congressman, and he is, as you pointed out, the most conservative Democratic congressman in Washington. I'd have to say, I can't think of anybody more conservative, vehemently anti-choice, against abortion almost in every instance. And he was challenged by Marie Newman, as you pointed out, in the 2018 Democratic primary. Basically, she was running at him from the left on issues of immigration reform, on issues of abortion rights, environmental issues. And he was able to eke out a victory in part because that Lipinski organization is still very strong, and also because he championed an aggressive opposition to abortion rights. So anybody who is against abortion rights in the 3rd Congressional Districts, apparently there are some people like that, voted for him. The rule of thumb in Chicago politics, or I don't know if it's just Chicago, but maybe everywhere, is that generally it takes two terms for a challenger before he or she could defeat an entrenched incumbent. It's definitely the rule of thumb in aldermanic politics. And so almost from the day the primary ended back in 2018, can you believe it's almost been 2 years, D? Marie Newman has been running for re-election. In that first run, she did not have the support of Nancy Pelosi, if you recall.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi stayed out of it. No, Nancy Pelosi endorsed Lipinski on the grounds that she supports her caucus members. She's very Madigan-esque. And I remember defending Nancy Pelosi on that position, sort of, getting a lot of heat from my friends on the left. But that's what House speakers do. they defend their caucus members. Is it a perfect world? No. Does it leave me frustrated and upset? Yes, from time to time. But that's just the reality of how speakers work, majority leaders work. Nancy Pelosi's been awfully quiet on this go-around. It's really hard for the Democrats to continue to push Dan Lipinski, particularly with his views on abortion. And that, I don't know what he was getting at with that attack on Elizabeth Warren for health care. I want to point out the 3rd Congressional District on social issues is to the left, I think, it's right there in the mainstream of where the Democrats are. And they went for, I think the 3rd went for Bernie Sanders in 2016, if I recall, against Hillary Clinton. So I think most people in the 3rd Congressional will be very open to Medicare for all. So I don't understand why he'd be attacking Medicare for all. It seems as though his worldview on abortion rights, his hostility to abortion rights, is now sort of converging with a hostility to health care for all as he just doubles down on being conservative. So, I think that Elizabeth Warren endorsement will, to answer your question, help Marie Newman. But it's going to be very tough to defeat the Lipinski political machine.
Well, I believe last time Newman got the endorsement from Bernie. Do you think...
Did she get the endorsement from Bernie?
She got the endorsement from Bernie.
She should get the endorsement from Bernie this time around.
Get them both.
Get them both. And then Kamala Harris, get her in there too. Huh?
All of them.
Get all of them.
And then Biden. Wait, now, hold on. Lipinski's a good fella.
Grandpa Joe. He'll get Lipinski mixed up with his dad.
Oh, and coming up later, too, we'll play the latest ad from Biden. I was pulling audio for for the segment we're going to play here in a minute. And,
okay.
Yeah, the ad from Biden's pretty. He's attacking all the other candidates. Here we go. It's election season, Democrats.
The debate's just around the corner on Thursday. He's gearing up for it, huh, D?
Yep. Now moving on to the Chicago mayor.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Today on Lori Lightfoot's schedule, because she didn't break her femur, get well soon, JB, public events. She's doing stuff.
All right, Lori.
Today, Lightfoot was in City Hall for her weekly meeting with Chicago Police Brass, and then attending the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation's 15th annual Candlelight Vigil. Now, it's only Tuesday, so I'm sure we'll have tons of content featuring our current Chicago mayor before the weekends. So, Ben, what do you say we talk about the former mayor, huh?
Take a chill pill, man.
Okay, that guy, yeah.
What's his name again? I forgot.
Former Chicago mayor Rahm Emanuel.
Oh, yeah, that's his name. Okay.
Yeah, and Rahm Emanuel is no longer in the local spotlight. No, he's now annoying everyone around the nation, especially those of the progressive persuasion.
Oh, boy.
After an appearance with his apparent BFF these days, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie on ABC's Sunday morning program This Week, former Mayor Rahm Emanuel came out of the political closet and let everybody know what, well, we here in Chicago knew the whole time. Rahm Emanuel is not a progressive.
Take a chill pill, man.
Okay. Will do.
All right.
The following comes from commondreams.org, the ABC political show. This week on Sunday devoted a chunk of time to attacking Medicare for all. Well, we were just talking about this. Drawing fire for the segment's panel makeup and language. During the discussion, Emanuel attacked progressive calls for Medicare for all. Both men claimed that voters would viscerally reject any attempt to change the nation's health care system, both by getting rid of private insurance and offering care to non-citizens. Wow. Recounting how he recently biked around Lake Michigan. Yeah, we knew this was coming. Nearly 1,000 miles, he said, through Michigan and Wisconsin. Rahm Emanuel said that at diners in the two Midwestern states, one constant theme emerged. We have the audio. Shout out to ABC for this. Take it away, Rahm Emanuel. And remember, here on the Ben Joravsky Show, when we play Rahm Emanuel quotes, we have one golden rule, and you have to remember it, all right? He's smart, and you're not.
We've taken a position so far, and the candidates have, through the process, a few have not, on basically Medicare for all, which is we're going to eliminate 150 million people's health care, and we're going to provide health care for people that just come over the border. That is an untenable position for the general election. As you know, George, I just biked around Lake Michigan. Nearly 1,000 miles through Michigan and Wisconsin, two really important states. Nobody at a diner ran at me and said, take my health care away. Nobody. This is reckless as it relates to, and you don't have to take the position to win the primary, and you're basically literally hindering yourself for the general election.
Wow, there's not more? No? That's it? Okay, yeah. All right, wow, where do I start with that one? So he biked around Wisconsin and Michigan, and nobody came up to him and said, please take my health care away. But I bet there were people who had said, I would like to have some health care. How about that? I'm sure he didn't talk to anybody about health care, by the way, while I was biking around Michigan. And if he went into a cafe, I'm sure he didn't talk to anybody. He's not known for being the friendliest guy in the world, when you know what I'm saying? And hence the I'm smart and you're not. By the way, let me just comment a little bit about Rahm and Chris Christie before I get into Rahm and Medicare for All. Rahm and Chris Christie emerged sort of on the national stage at roughly the same time as politicians. What I mean is Rahm, after he left the White House, was elected mayor of the city of Chicago. And that was around the time Chris Christie, if you recall, was centering himself, getting ready to run for president, positioning himself as the kind of Republicans that a Democrat would vote for. I know this sounds so bizarre to think about when you think of the collapse of Chris Christie's political career, but that's how he's positioning himself back in 2011, 2012. And Rahm, on the other hand, was positioning himself as the kind of Democrat who is not afraid to turn on his left of center Democratic base and cut deals with corporate America and cut deals with Republicans. So they were both sort of presenting themselves as mainstream politicians who could work across party lines. Since then, that notion of a Republican who works with Democrats has been blown up. Chris Christie, his political career torpedoed for his own problems in the state of New Jersey. But without getting into those, the notion that a Republican would make a concession with a Democrat on any issue is just unthinkable right now in the age of Donald Trump. And to take health care, the existential crisis of healthcare in this country right now, Obamacare, as created by former President Obama with Rahm Emanuel in the White House as his chief of staff, is under threat of being destroyed by a lawsuit that was filed in Texas, and that lawsuit is being supported by the Trump administration. If the Trump administration prevails and the lawsuit is successful and the Supreme Court rules in favor of the plaintiffs who have filed that suit, Obamacare will be eradicated, and there will be no health care for millions of people. Okay, and so this is a very pressing problem that our country is facing right now, and Democrats who pretend that somehow or other they can find alliances with Republicans to maintain Obamacare are fooling themselves. Obamacare, as flawed as it was and as flawed as it is, was passed virtually with all Democratic support. I can't think of, off the top of my head, any Republicans who backed it. At the moment, I can't think of any Republican congressmen or senators who support it. So there is no other side to work with on this issue. In fact, the entire other side is lined up against the Democrats. So in this situation, I don't know why Mayor Rahm would counsel Democrats to have restraint and to look to cut deals and to look to try to preserve what we have, when the reality is if we don't take a vigilant stand on behalf of the Obamacare, we will lose everything. So I just think that Rahm Emanuel, once again, is preaching an outdated ideology, and that is what it is, or an outdated strategy or an outdated tactic that won't work. And it probably, I would argue, it didn't work back in 2010 because there were no Republicans willing to support Obama back then, and it really doesn't work in 2020. Where were we at? 2019. I forgot for a moment where we were. Anyway,
Thank you, Chicago, for this humbling victory. All I can say, you sure know how to make a guy feel at home. Yeah!
And, let me just say this as well. We've talked at length. We call it the Mick Dumke theory, that no Democrat, in honor of my good friend Mick Dumke, a ProPublica reporter, who has argued that it is a disadvantage for a Democrat to go into Michigan and Wisconsin against Donald Trump and talk about taking something away. You should talk about expanding it. And so when I hear Rahm Emanuel talking the way he is, he's not even going into Mick Dumke country. He's beyond that. He's talking about he's maligning and mocking the left side of his Democratic Party as though they're the reasons there's something wrong with our country, as opposed to saying, you know what, let's expand Obama. First of all, let's protect it from the attack from Republicans. Secondly, let's expand it and strengthen it as best we can. And yes, I understand the goals and the ideals that you have. No, he's not even talking in that way. He's just the same old dismissive, condescending, arrogant, I know what's right, shut up and get in line. Rahm that got himself in trouble, D, back in 2011 when he came back to Chicago and told Karen Lewis to shut the beep up and fall in line. That man is determined never to learn anything. And the notion that Chris Christie is the friend of Democrats, how preposterous is that? Remember Chris Christie was an advocate. Here, I'm all fired up now. Remember when Chris Christie was going on TV advocating for Donald Trump back in 2016? It was Christie and Giuliani always going on TV pushing Trump. Whatever disaster Trump confronted, they're the ones who went on TV to argue in favor of it. And so now Trump wouldn't hire him as his chief of staff, apparently, because Kushner's parents were still mad at him because Chris Christie, as a prosecutor, prosecuted Jared Kushner's father. So apparently they threw Christie out of the White House, and now he's found a career with Rahm Emanuel, who got thrown out of Chicago. So I guess they deserve each other. But the notion that Rahm Emanuel is looking out for the best interests of the Democratic Party, I think is an absurd notion. Democrats should be very cautious about repeating what Rahm is saying because it didn't work in 2016 in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, as you know, and I doubt it's going to work in 2020.
You know, you got a lot of passion there. Are you starting to miss Rahm Emanuel? You are, aren't you? I could tell. You're starting to miss the guy.
You know, it's funny. I do get a lot of passion. You remember Lori Glenn when we interviewed her? By the way, everybody, not now, but go check out that interview. That was a pretty good interview. When did we post that? Yesterday. It was a bonus. They brought in Lori Glenn and Juanita Irizarry to defend Lori Lightfoot. They said I was too harsh on her. But remember, they said, you're getting all red in the face. Remember, you're getting... Meanwhile, she was pointing her finger at me like this. Anyway, I do get passionate. What can I tell you?
You are missing him a little bit. I can tell.
I'm getting a Rahm tattoo later today.
I knew it. I knew it. All right, that's what's going on locally. Now let's go to you, the YouTube live stream viewers. You guys are weighing in here. Let's read what you guys are thinking. Let's see here. Our good friend, let me see here. Oh, okay, so we got people saying goodbye to John Bolton.
Oh, yeah, John Bolton. He either quit or got fired. I'm not quite sure which one it is. Yes.
Brianna weighed in. She says now he has more time to wax that awful mustache. Yeah. How about Kyle? Kyle weighed in here. He says Elizabeth Warren supports Marie Newman. Sherry Bustos of the DCCCC is going to be pissed.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Remember, that was the, what was it? They said that any operative who works for a candidate who's not against an incumbent will be not given any business by the DCCCC. Yeah. I thought that was an extreme tactic to take, and I was opposed to it, and definitely is the case. Come on. You're asking Democrats a lot. You're asking a lot of Democrats and are loyal to the party to support Dan Lipinski over Marie Newman, particularly when it comes to the issue of reproductive rights.
Kyle weighed in again and says, Rahm Emanuel has a very nice burnt umber tan that he was showing off this weekend. A very nice tan on his appearance on ABC.
Well, that bike ride, all right?
I'm telling you.
Okay, that bike ride around the lake where he was talking to people about health care. He'd go to a cafe in Wisconsin. Hey, excuse me, what do you think about health care?
Ladies and gentlemen, gather around. I want to talk to all of you about health care.
I know you don't want to give up your health care, so I'm offering what? You don't have health care? Ah, shut up, you're a loser. Get out of here.
All right.
Shut up and fall in line and vote for Uncle Joe.
Brianna weighed in. She says, anybody get the feeling Rahm is going to run for something statewide or national? Why else would he be doing a tour to Lake Michigan? Yeah, we can't get rid of this guy.
I don't know what Rahm could run for and win in the Democratic primary. He's so far to the right, or most Democrats are these days, trying to figure out what he could possibly, and he's not likable. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, Jesse White is unbeatable Secretary of State and really don't know what his ideology is, but everybody likes him. I can't think of anybody who likes Rahm, right? I mean, I'm trying. We have a lot of people come at Ben. You're unfair to Rahm, this, that, the other thing. But has anybody ever said, I really like Rahm?
Well, there was one.
Who?
Tom Mack.
What did Big Tommy Mack, editorial board writer for the Chicago Sun-Times, sat in here and said, Ben, you're unfair to Rahm. That's what he accused me. He was one of the many. He said Rahm every day wakes up and thinks about what he could do for the west side of Chicago. That's what he said, D.
I was right here.
I love Tommy Mack to death, but I just disagree with him on that point. I think Rahm wakes up every day and says, what can I do for myself?
So do you see him possibly running for something statewide or national?
Anything is possible, but I just, no, not at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, anything is possible, but I don't see that in my, hold on, let me look at my crystal ball.
Oh, get that crystal ball. Look at that.
Oh my God, my dryer's broken. It says, did I tell you about my broken dryer?
Wait, hold on. Oh yeah, we lost all the listeners.
Wait, hold on, I'm looking at my crystal ball. Oh my God, the Bears don't have a quarterback. Did I tell you about that? Every other team does. Oh, we could have had Sean. Nope, Watson. Got to get Mike Trubisky. Anyway, sorry.
I'd say to Brianna that Rahm's milking off his brother there, the big agent, and getting all the TV gigs, and he's going to be a pundit. That's what I'd say his future looks like.
He's going to be a pundit, and also don't forget he's some kind of investment firm. Remember, he got a job with some boutique investment firm. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So Rahm, don't worry about Rahm.
Or maybe Steven weighed in. He says Rahm could possibly get a job in Trump's cabinet at this point.
At this stage, yes, he could. Trump could put him in charge of health care. How about that? I'm going to take away all your health care. Shut up, fall in line, and vote for me.
And finally, Steven says, they seem desperate, and so does he. Talking about Rahm Emanuel, I guess.
Yeah. No, but the whole notion, the advice that somehow or other Democrats should stop asking or demanding that government provide an essential service like health care and instead allow our government to take our taxes and spend it on what? Remember the $16 billion that Trump suddenly found to just pay off farmers, to pay them, so to keep them from protesting his tariff policies, or putting them out of business. Remember that $16 billion? Somehow or other, we have $16 billion to prop up Donald Trump's reelection campaign, but we don't have $16 billion for health care in this country. And the advice of Democrats like Rahm, and I put Democrats in quotes, is to Democratic voters, shut up and fall in line and vote for who we tell you to vote for. Didn't work in 20 and 16, guy. Did not work in 2016.
You are missing him. I see it all over your face.
Hold on. RE plus BJ.
Oh, there we go. He's getting that tattoo ready, everybody.
It's a pen too. Yeah, pen too. Yeah.
So there you are, some local news. Hey, podcast fans, that's you guys. If you're listening to this, I'm assuming you're a fan. The team at the Chicago Sun-Times has a new show to add to your listening lineup. Huh?
Yeah.
This football season, get the inside scoop on the Chicago Bears with, what is this word, Ben? Halas?
Halas. Good God, you can tell he's from a Cardinal fan. George Halas. Halas Hall.
Oh, okay, with Halas and
Papa Bear.
Papa Bear. The latest podcast from the Chicago Sun-Times. It's called Halas Intrigue. I will not butcher that name anymore. Now I know. Halas Intrigue.
Wow.
You're intrigued.
Yeah, I'm intrigued with that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Bear reporters from Sun-Times. Ask any Bear guy. Do they know you can get a good quarterback? It's possible to have a good quarterback? Bears haven't had a good quarterback since Jim McMahon, the punky QB.
And he barely was good.
Come on. Whoa. Watch what you say about the punky QB.
Tune in to hear Sun-Times sports reporters and Bear experts, including Patrick Finley.
Finley's good.
Mark Potash.
Potash is good, too.
Jason Lacier.
All of them.
Rick Morrissey. Rick Tielander.
Oh, I love Rick Tielander.
All of them. And evaluate games, watch them, they'll make predictions, provide insights, and analyze the day's big stories. Stay informed this football season. Listen to Halas Intrigue.
Very good.
At suntimes.com/Halas. That's HALAS. And be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Check it out now at suntimes.com/Halas. Halas.
HALAS. George Halas, Papa Bear, founder of the Chicago Bears, one of the founders of the NFL. And they've named everything Bear related after George Halas. Although he's not the greatest Bear of all time. You know that, D.
Oh.
Walter
Payton.
Sweetness Payton. Don't get it twisted, people.
Do not get it twisted. And hey, what's a Live read on the Ben Joravsky Show about football without this noise.
Ready, set, 2020.
Yeah.
Blue dog, blue dog.
Blue dog, blue dog.
That's the audible.
Don't go anywhere, everybody, because after this break, well, more of the Ben Joravsky Show. And we also got our Chicago Reader colleague, Maya Dukmasova. She's hopefully somewhere around here. We're going to be talking to her a little later on as well. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Attention Chicago innovators and creators, 2019 Chicago Ideas Week is coming soon. October 12th through the 17th, this annual Ideas Festival is back, and it's the largest, most affordable Ideas Festival of its kind. They bring in hundreds of thought leaders from around the globe and some local to share ideas and spark action all across Chicago. To get a better idea of what to expect, here's a bit of audio from last year's Chicago Ideas Week with special guest and Chicago comedian Cameron Esposito.
Everything that I have ever tried to do has had two motivations. One is I really do believe in trying to create social change, and then the other one is I'm scared and alone too, so I would like for you to join me. You know, every job that I have, I try to make sure to hold the door open. That's like my motto for like if I get through, you're coming with me, and I believe in that wholeheartedly, and especially if I have more privilege than you, like I'm holding the door open for you even wider.
October 12th through the 17th, it's 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Tickets go on sale to members on August 22nd and to general public September 10th. Once again, if you're an innovator or creator in the city of Chicago or even outside the city, you must join us for Chicago Ideas Week, October 12th through the 17th. For tickets and event information, head to chicagoideas.com. That's chicagoideas.com, and we hope to see you October 12th through the 17th for 2019 Chicago Ideas Week.
So what we did instead was rolled up our sleeves and got to work to address this fiscal crisis. We focused on creating a foundational shift in the way that the city not only balances its budget, but also in the way in which we looked to the future. First, by in the short term, creating structural efficiencies in the way we spend your tax dollars, laying the foundation for a strategy that shifts the focus to investing in our people, our neighborhoods, and not just in our central business district. We are working to create a real growth strategy that deals everyone in, regardless of neighborhood or zip code.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Get to know your city on one of Chicago Architecture Center's 65 walking tours. Hear the unforgettable secrets and stories behind Chicago architecture from our expert docents. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a tour right now. Oh, wow, look at that building. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/il-resident.
America does not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. Yes.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed, we are live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Our good friend Maya is on her way. I don't know where she is. Hope all is well. She's usually prompt on time. But anyway, Maya, be safe wherever you are, all right? Just there was an interesting article in today's Sun-Times that I was going to talk about, written by an old friend of mine, Peter Cunningham. Speaking of Rahm Emanuel, Pete Cunningham is a publicist and a political strategist.
Apparently one hell of a guitar player.
And a very good guitar player, yes, indeed. He can be, I always tease him, he is the only Rahm lover who can play a guitar, all right? So he's very creative. Not that Rahm lovers aren't creative, but...
Well, I'm sure there's a few that could play like a ukulele or something, right? I don't think of creativity in the arts in Rahm Emanuel. But anyway, Pete Cunningham is very much like a mainstream Democrat. He's worked... Oh, gosh, let me go down. He worked for Arnie Duncan. He was Arnie Duncan's chief spokesperson when Arnie was running the Chicago Public Schools. He worked for Mayor Daley back in the 90s. He was a speechwriter for Mayor Daley. I believe Pete Cunningham was the one who wrote the Ren 10 speech, the speech that Mayor Daley gave back in 2000, 2001, somewhere around there, where they talked about expanding charter schools, et cetera. So Pete is very much a Democrat, mainstream Democrat, and as such, we differ on a lot of issues. He was one of the chief strategists for Mayor Baby Daley. Baby Daley's, Bill Daley's run for mayor in the last campaign. I think Pete was his campaign spokesperson, and as such, he was the one who had to put the good spin on for whatever Bill Daley was up to. Anyway, he wrote a very interesting article in today's Sun-Times, and I reached out to him as well. And here's to come in and talk about it, but here's the part that I enjoyed. He's talking about using public dollars to reverse the decline in South and West Side's communities and use those public dollars to build affordable housing and then entice people to move to areas that have had huge population falls over the last few years. And to pay for the housing, he says Chicago could use tax increment financing to work with nonprofit developers to subsidize the construction of 4,000 new units of single-family housing on city-owned vacant land. With zero land acquisition costs, the construction price could be held under $200,000. The total cost would be about $800 million, which is considerably less than the city is investing in the Lincoln Yards development on the north side. When I read that line, I tell you what, D, I almost burst out laughing. PC! Finding his inner Ben Joravsky and denouncing in his own way a TIF program, perhaps the poster child of bad TIF spending, the Lincoln Yard deal. So, of course, I immediately reached out to him. I texted him, and we got on the phone, and I cut a deal. He's coming in next week, so I'm looking forward to talking to him. I'm always looking out for my friends of the right, on the right of the Democratic persuasion. I always say, well, for me, my ideology on this show basically runs from Joe Biden to Maya. All right, so you go from Joe Biden is on the right, Maya's on the left.
Wow, if I'm your leftist example of the leftist person, you really need to get out more.
Yeah, well, okay, it's a good point. There's so
many people that truly make me look like Stalin.
I would not say Sam Holloway makes you look like Stalin. You make Sam Holloway look like Stalin, but I guess I go beyond Maya because I think we have some Green Party people come on as well.
Pete Cunningham channeled his inner Ben Joravsky. Maybe you should channel your inner Pete Cunningham and learn the guitar.
I wish I could. I wish I could play the guitar. I'll say this about Pete Cunningham. I'm going to say this.
Return the favor,
the guy's a heck of a guitar player, all right? His politics may be whacked, but he is a heck of a guitar player. And he says he may bring the guitar in next week when he comes in to talk politics. So I'm looking for,
sure, I guess.
But now that Rahm's out of office, PC's finding his inner Ben Joravsky. Anyway, Maya, I was getting a little worried about you, but you're here.
This traffic.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
The city's killing me.
You're all good. You're healthy, and that's what matters most. All right, so I give my guests homework assignments. This morning, bright and early, I got an email. I wasn't even awake when you sent it.
Of course you weren't.
The
rest of us have gotten up and started working.
I was not awake. That thing came in at like 7 in the morning or something like that. Anyway, it was a very enlightening article and InjusticeWatch.org about Tim Evans. Talk about it. Let's take the deep dive.
Yeah, so Thursday, I guess, is when this is happening. But Tim Evans is up for a vote to continue being the chief judge of the Circuit Court of Cook County. And what folks may not realize or understand is that the chief judge is not selected by popular vote of the voters of the county. Instead, the chief judge is selected by the other judges, by the judges of the circuit court. So most of the judges that sit in Cook County criminal and civil courtrooms are elected by us. And then, there's retention elections that happen as well to keep them on the bench. There's, those are called, that's like one pool of judges. And then there's another pool of judges that's smaller called associate judges who are selected by the elected judges to be judges. So there are some people who are directly elected by the people, some judges who are directly elected by the people, and then another group that are elected by other judges. And the chief judge is selected by all of the judges that are sitting in various courtrooms in Cook County. So the interesting thing about Tim Evans' position is that he is a public official overseeing one of the three branches of municipal government. But unlike other politicians in the legislative and executive branches, his electorate are the judges, not the people.
Right.
So his primary, if to think of Tim Evans as a political animal, which maybe you can explain to folks why that's the only way to think of Tim Evans. His politics, his realm of practicing politics is fairly minimally when it comes to the actual people of this county. And most of that, the arena in which he has to practice politics is within and among the judges that elect him. So he's got a challenger this year. I forgot her name already.
Lorna Props.
Yes. So she is running against Tim Evans, and what she's campaigning on, and again, these campaigns, this is very insular. She's campaigning among the other 400 judges, or however many judges there are in Cook County. She's saying that Tim Evans has not done a good enough job protecting the judiciary of the county from political attacks. And one of the main examples of that is the fact that this past year was the first year since 1990 that any sitting judge was not retained. It was Judge Coughlin who was actually, this was something that began to be exposed by Injustice Watch, this same, it's a great nonprofit news source about criminal justice issues and the judiciary in Cook County. They started writing stories about how Judge Coughlin, when he was a prosecutor, Matthew Coughlin, he was involved in various cases that had to do with police misconduct and just had a kind of an unsavory history as a prosecutor, and also an unsavory track record as a judge. And so, there was this kind of journalistic campaign and messaging campaign out there that maybe we shouldn't retain this guy. To be retained, you have to get 60% of the popular vote, and usually people, when they get to the judicial part of the ballot, they just say yes to all the judges.
If they vote at all.
Right. They may skip the ballot entirely, but if they do it, most people just vote yes. And the Cook County Democratic Party, to which most of these judges belong, and other messaging, the campaign messaging is always about vote yes on all the judges, vote yes to retain all these judges. So this was an almost unprecedented, at this point it's been so long that you might as well call it unprecedented moment in county history that there was an actual campaign against retaining a sitting judge. And so he didn't get the 60% needed to be retained, and he was booted off the bench. And actually, the Cook County Democratic Party ended up coming up against him. I remember there were robocalls from Tony Preckwinkle that were vote yes to retain all of the sitting judges except for Matthew Coughlin. So the woman who's running against Tim Evans is telling folks that, because this happened, this is a great example of why Tim Evans isn't sticking up for us, and we need a better representative. So I would love to hear what you think about how Tim Evans is you know more about him than I do. Like, how do you see him handling this kind of challenge? Because he's been in this position longer than any chief judge, I think, in the country.
I think it's 18 years, but don't quote me on that.
And it's since 1993.
Oh, no, but I'm talking about he has been the chief judge.
Yeah, since he lost to Tony Preckwinkle for the 4th Ward election, 92, 92,
No,
93?
okay. I do not believe, and this could be a great bet to make, that he immediately became chief judge of Circuit Court of Cook County, I believe.
He did. I think so.
I believe it was about 18 years ago. Whatever. Tim Evans, I could give a whole lecture on Tim Evans. But Tim Evans began his career as an alderman of the 4th Ward. He was very much a part of the regular organization, and Richard J. Daley, that's Baby Daley's dad. And then what happened in 1983 when Harold Washington was elected, he made the transition to become a Harold Washington supporter, and he was Harold Washington's floor leader. In the fight against Eddie Verdoliak and Eddie Burke and Council Wars, and it pretty much changed his whole reputation. He went from being sort of the stereotypical machine alderman to becoming the spokesperson for the independent, quote-unquote, reform movement of Harold Washington. And when Harold Washington died, there was a split in the black community, of course, Gene Sawyer versus Tim Evans. The black community has never really retained its voice, if you will. It's never spoke with a single voice since then. Evans and Sawyer probably led to, I can say this, the division in the black community between Evans and Sawyer led to Mayor Daley's victory in 1989. And soon thereafter, both Evans and Sawyer were defeated as committeemen. And Evans was defeated by Tony Preckwinkle when he ran when she ran against him in 1991, I want to say.
Yeah, you're right, 91.
Yeah, and then soon thereafter became a judge.
Yeah, and you're right that he only became chief judge in 2001. So
yeah, about 18 years, if I do the math correct. Anyway, so yes, so he's very much an insider, and he's run it. The judiciary is an insider. Very rarely do I see him quoted in the newspapers. I know that he never has returned a phone call I have ever made to him.
And he has a PR apparatus that is like very well oiled to keep him away from having to talk to the public at all, which is why it's so funny that this campaign against him is being like pitched as like he hasn't defended us enough, with the media and whatever, when I don't know of any public official in this county that has a more that defends its institution more doggedly against any kind of not even criticism, but questions that people might ask. I don't know any elected official's office that is more doggedly defensive of their institution than Tim Evans' office is of the judges of Cook County. Like, it's so interesting that this thing with Coughlin and, the bail reform, which again, like, I guess some people have it stuck in their craw that he wasn't, doing his best to defend the integrity of the judiciary by like embracing this bail reform, and issuing the order to make bond court judges, like they can, technically they're now supposed to only set money bonds if at a level that the person can afford. So it was already required by the Illinois Constitution that they consider people's financial circumstances when setting the amount of bail, but like now it was like the chief judge's office were saying, okay, you have to do this. So
well, there's a lot going on here, and it's so ironic that Tim Evans has more or less been lumped together with Tony Preckwinkle and Kim Foxx.
Because they hate each other.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep Kim Foxx out of this, but you're right. Tim Evans and Tony Preckwinkle were rivals in the 4th Ward on the south side of Chicago, the Hyde Park, Kenwood area for years and years. Tony Preckwinkle, I think, ran 3 times for alderman against Tim Evans, lost the first 2 times. And she said this when she was at the Hideout show with Mick Dumke and myself, that ironically, the only reason she won in 1991 is because Harold Washington had died, and the fallout, she was the unlikely beneficiary of that fallout between Sawyer and Evans, because people were just disgusted with both factions, and she was able to slip by Tim Evans and get elected alderman. So this notion that somehow or other they are joined together in wanting to reform our criminal justice system to poor people who are just sort of trapped in it is very bizarre. He's very much a mainstream, established Democratic politician, and you're absolutely correct. He's had his position as a chief judge in such a way as to protect the incumbency of judges. In the one instance with Matthew Coughlin, the entire apparatus of the Cook County Democratic Party united to work against him. But
and Tim Evans wasn't even on the front line saying anything about it. Like, he wasn't even a voice that was like, yes, we need to get Coughlin out. Like, he wasn't taking any kind of stands. Like, they're basically saying he didn't do enough to protect Coughlin.
Yeah.
When technically, like, his job, like if we really think about the fact that this is a public official representing the third branch of, co-equal government in our municipal environment here, like his responsibility technically should be to the people of this county. Like, I know his political allegiances and behaviors and whatever calculations all revolve around his actual quote unquote constituency, which is the judges that elect him. But like, in actual fact, his job is not to protect the judges that are currently sitting on the bench. It's to protect the integrity of the judicial system in this county.
Absolutely. And there are going always to be instances where this or that judge will do something that is so extreme, that is so embarrassing, that is so potentially riddled with conflict, that the establishment of Cook County has to turn against them.
And that is so rare. And it happens, this happens, and we don't even know about it. The only way that the establishment turns against these judges is when there's some kind of attention onto it. But the truth is, especially when it comes to the judges sitting in civil courtrooms, most of them are in environments where we don't even have any court reporters or recording equipment in those courtrooms to have any kind of record of what these folks do on the bench. So there's a tremendous amount of like good faith that our judges are performing well and are functioning with integrity. But like, I would just invite folks to like spend some time, especially in the civil courtrooms of this county. Go watch some divorce cases.
Oh, civil courtrooms.
Yes, in the criminal courtrooms as well. All kinds of, you hear all kinds of wild stuff being said by judges on the bench, in the criminal courtrooms. But there's a lot more attention to the criminal justice system. Go spend some time in the eviction courtrooms. I mean, they just got recording equipment there for the first time in like almost 2 decades. So that may have some impact. But go to a family court, go to the domestic violence courtrooms, go to the eviction courtrooms, go to the things that the parts of the civil justice apparatus that also, by the way, impact poor people disproportionately in this county. And you will see judges doing and saying things that will blow your mind. Yeah. And like, there is absolutely no attention paid to that. And the public just sort of assumes that everything is rolling along fine. And now there's just like a hair of attention being paid. And like, some journalists did their jobs and called out a judge that maybe shouldn't be in a position to be like having so much power in our criminal justice system. And these people are freaking out. Yeah.
No, I don't know.
And they think that Tim Evans isn't fighting hard enough for them.
I like I said, I've seen this. This is a backlash to Kim Foxx and Tony Preckwinkle and the changes they've tried to make in criminal justice. I can't even articulate it really, because Tony Preckwinkle has become symbolic of something that she really has never been her entire political career. And Tim Evans has become symbolic of something that he's never been.
Absurd.
So when you it's like a chess game, and they're convenient pieces, you know what I'm saying, that represent something that they really aren't. But in our current system, and I just saw this, your good friend and who you love very dearly, John Cass, just wrote a column, just teasing. He wrote a column in the Chicago Tribune where he was championing, follow me on this, Lori Lightfoot, and denigrating Tony Preckwinkle, and the issue was on criminal justice.
Well, and it was disgusting because he was also implying that because they're both black women, they should be thinking alike. Like there was like a
he wasn't implying. He literally stated that as.
I mean, I honestly,
Okay, so beyond that, and by the way, we're probably having a discussion with this in about a half an hour. Lavonte Stewart will be in here. We're talking a lot more criminal justice with him. But the central argument there was that somehow or other, Tony Preckwinkle and Kim Foxx are responsible for murders in the city of Chicago because they're for bail reform, because they believe that you should not just lock people up in jail before they have been convicted of anything because they can't pay the bond. They can't meet the bond and the bail.
This, by the way, continuing in a situation in which we have there's no evidence that people who are getting let out on bail are then going and committing these acts of violence.
Well, that's so that's, when you get into a political debate like we're having between Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle, you're right. It's not as though it's a dispassionate debate where we analyze the flaws of the system and how we may improve the system so that violent people aren't just routinely let out where they can commit more. Because that would be a problem if that were happening.
Yeah, but it's not what's happening.
It's on a wide. There's this example and that example, which is what John Cass focused on, but it's sort of like Donald Trump focusing on one immigrant who kills somebody and saying all immigrants are murderers and rapists. So that's the situation that we're at right now. We have this larger political debate, and it is a backlash against Tony Preckwinkle and Kim Foxx, and it's so bizarre that Tim Evans is getting swept up in this as well. Sometimes, I just look at what's going on in politics in Chicago with utter disbelief because I'm old enough to remember where all these people come from and what they represent and what they symbolize.
Well, right. And it's like, I just don't, it's truly baffling. And it's truly amazing that reactionary forces in the city or just in general are able to mobilize and rile people up using not in a fact-free environment entirely.
Yeah.
I guess it shouldn't be surprising, but it's just it's really dispiriting because people facts are out there and they're easier to access than ever. If you want to know what's going on with judges and the judicial system in Cook County, just go read Injustice Watch. This is a website run by folks who are these are stalwart journalists that are not, if you think the reader is a leftist rag, this is not that kind of journalistic environment. This is just straight mainline reporting on the facts, and all you have to do is go there and read about what is happening in your courtrooms that your taxpayer that your taxes are going to pay for, and it's pretty easy to see that there's so much room for improvement. But I don't know. I guess people prefer reading John Cass. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's
all
wild.
Right. And by the way, Vanessa Buenger is on deck. We're going to bring her on and talk about Chicago Ideas Week. Before we do that, Dee, can we play? I know I didn't prepare Maya for this, but I'm really curious what a reaction would be to Mayor Rahm's comments on the George Stephanopoulos show this weekend.
Mayor Rahm, please, come on.
Old Mayor Rahm. And we had a little fun with this. Get your thoughts on he's coming back as a political pundit. Here's Mayor.
Shocker. Shocker. I'm so shocked.
Here's Mayor Rahm on his great ideas for the Democratic candidates for president.
We've taken a position so far, and the candidates have, through the process, a few have not, on basically Medicare for all, which is we're going to eliminate 150 million people's health care, and we're going to provide health care for people that just come over the border. That is an untenable position for the general election. As you know, George, I just biked around Lake Michigan. Nearly 1,000 miles through Michigan and Wisconsin, two really important states. Nobody at a diner ran at me and said, take my health care away. Nobody. This is reckless as it relates to, and you don't have to take the position to win the primary, and you're basically literally hindering yourself for the general election.
Literally 1,000 miles.
Mayor Rahm on his bike riding around Wisconsin and Michigan, and nobody's discussing running up to him, take my health care. I'm sure nobody came up to him anyway on any issue, but you hear Mayor Rahm giving advice to Democratic candidates. We got the debate coming up on Thursday. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, fuck him. But my second thought is that I'm going to just keep saying what I've been saying for months. And what I'm going to keep saying is that, the Democrats are going to lose no matter what their positions are if they continue to think that the only people who matter are people at diners that already have health insurance. Most people at diners do not have health insurance at all. Like, the people working at diners do not have health insurance. You know, like, you do not need to flip a single vote in Wisconsin for the Democrats to win back the state. They just need to do a little more work to turn out the people that didn't bother voting. But they continue to and just among people of color that live in Wisconsin, the people who are already more prone to be voting for Democrats anyway, but literally were too dispirited to have to choose between him and Hillary Clinton. Like, if you just did voter registration work and get out the vote efforts among people who did not vote last time, you don't need to bother about changing anybody's mind. But like, this is like a continuation of this idiotic position that like the only way they're going to win is by flipping back Trump voters. Like, good luck. Okay. Cause like, it's not a winning strategy.
Well put, Maya. And that image of him going into a diner somewhere in Wisconsin and Michigan and speaking to the little people is really preposterous. Maya, thanks so much for coming in and fighting the traffic. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for your patience.
Vanessa Buenger is on deck. We're going to talk about Chicago Ideas Week when we return.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Get to know your city on one of Chicago Architecture Center's 65 walking tours. Hear the unforgettable secrets and stories behind Chicago architecture from our expert docents. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a tour right now. Oh, wow, look at that building. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
All right, everybody, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Tuesday, September 10th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions once again for jumping on board and bringing back our program. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, not Aerosmith, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. All 3 of you unions are amazing. And, of course, today's show is brought to you in part by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Tuesday, September 10th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, we're talking Chicago Ideas Week with Vanessa Buenger, and we welcome community activist Lavonte Stewart. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Yes, indeed. Vanessa Buenger is in the studio. Lavonte Stewart is on his way to the studio. We're going to talk Ideas Week. But Maya, I can't let you go without telling folks the good news about the Reader, what the Reader will be doing next week. Talk about it.
This week's good news about the Reader, because there's good news about the Reader every week. This week's good news is that everybody should really make sure to pick up the paper on Thursday, even more so than they should be making sure to pick it up every week, because we've got a big partnership, collaboration coming out with the Marshall Project called We Are Witness. Marshall Project has been doing a series of video-based interviews, basically, with in different places with various people who are involved in the criminal justice system, people who've been, they did one on immigration actually in New York, people who were workers in the immigration court system, people who, were undocumented immigrants, people who worked with refugees, like just different various people who work in the immigration system in one way or another. And they sort of give personal testimonies about their experiences with the system. And it's a very kind of there's no kind of political points to it at all. It's literally meant to be a window into what it's like to be in the system for these various different kinds of people. So here in Chicago, they're doing it on the criminal justice system, and we are their partners for the print package that will be coming out in the paper and online on Thursday. WBEZ is partnering with them on the audio. But so the Marshall Project is producing the main videos, and there'll be like lots of video interviews that you'll be able to see online on our website and theirs. And then we at the Reader have produced a series of stories, print stories, articles that go along with these videos. And so we're really excited about it, and folks should pick up the paper on Thursday, check out the website, and BZ has already portion of the project every afternoon this week. So
right, that's pretty cool.
Watch out for
you
it.
should be reading the Reader anyway, but that was a special reason. The Reader comes out on Wednesday, but you pick it up everywhere on Thursday. So thank you very much, Maya, for that. Let's switch our attention to Vanessa Buenger, Chicago Ideas Week. Vanessa, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
All right. Now let's take it step by step. Tell folks, first of all, what is Chicago Ideas Week?
Well, Chicago Ideas Week is Chicago Ideas' annual week-long Ideas Festival. And Chicago Ideas is the ideas platform for everyone. We were founded on the principle that ideas should be accessible, that there are tons of ideas festivals out in the world, but none that are not gated by price or by invitation-only gated ways of that nature. And Chicago Ideas exists to take down those barriers, and under the understanding that our curiosity, not our income or our zip code or education level, should be what connects us. And we do that by making premium experiences that are accessible and affordable. Most of our tickets are priced at just $15. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we also have free events. So yeah, we're here to enrich the lives of Chicagoans, of the world, and to contribute to a more thriving city.
All right. And so with that, begins October 12th, goes to the 17th.
Correct.
At the Harris Theater, Museum of Contemporary Art, Pritzker Pavilion. So it's one of those 3 sites. And let's talk about some of the great speakers you're bringing in, or some of the interesting speakers, and it's quite a lineup. Let's just start at the top. Hillary Clinton will be there.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton will be joining us on Monday night for our signature State of the Union talk titled Idea, Should Policy Have a Conscience? I think, in addition to the Clintons joining us and discussing some of the resilient women featured in their new book, The Book of Gutsy Women, I think the most incredible part of that session is that it's an evening with powerhouse speakers like J.D. Vance, who's the best-selling author of Hillbilly Elegy, which is his memoir about growing up in poverty in Ohio. We also have Samantha Power, the former ambassador to the UN. We also have Helene Gayle, who's the CEO of Chicago organization, the Chicago Community Trust. And this is all people sharing diverse, nonpartisan perspectives. And you're getting all of these people in one session for just $15.
Wait a minute. So I just want to make sure we understand this. So it won't just be Hillary Clinton,
correct,
former Secretary of State, former senator, Democratic candidate for president.
Oh, that's who it is.
And as I like to point out, who got the most votes in 2016, just pointing that out. It's true. Just making that observation. She got the most votes. So it won't be Hillary giving a speech alone. It'll be Hillary participating in a panel discussion. Do I have that correct?
She will be sitting down in conversation with her daughter, Chelsea. They'll be discussing their book, The Book of Gutsy Women. So it's a talk, and it will be separated by segments.
I see.
So they will have their own segments, so you will get your time with the Clinton women.
I get you.
But you will also hear from other powerhouse speakers.
Well, this is quite a lot. I mean, J.D. Vance, I don't know if you read Hillbilly Elegy. It's a very well-written book, and I think it's being turned into a movie, and it's a voice for people who don't normally have a voice given to them. And Samantha Power, oh my goodness, she wrote a book. I remember her book before she went to work for Barack Obama about genocide. I don't know if you remember that. That was from about 12 years ago. She was a journalist who became a diplomat. Got in trouble with Hillary Clinton. I'm sure they're not going to talk about that from the 2008 campaign. Does anybody remember this stuff other than me? I'm just doing this off the top of my head. So she will be on that Monday night as well?
Correct.
And so that should be so they will not be on stage at the same time.
Correct.
Then. Okay.
That's correct.
But if you, for one ticket, you can see all of them?
Correct.
Dang, man.
$15. Spend 2 hours with us Monday night, and you will.
What time does it start?
It's at 6:30 p.m.
So 6:30 to 8:30.
Correct.
Is it sold out?
I believe it's currently sold out to the general public. We just went on sale with general admission tickets this morning. You'll have to go check our website. There are oftentimes, I encourage you to check back. There could be ways to get tickets closer to the event date, but I believe that right now we are sold out to the general public. But keep your eyes peeled. We have more exciting announcements coming soon as well.
Where will this show be? Which one?
Harris Theater.
Harris Theater.
Correct.
And so where's Harris Theater again?
Harris Theater's on Randolph, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Randolph and Michigan, I believe, are the biggest.
Isn't that Harris Theater?
intersections.
The one in Millennium Park where they have the dance.
Right by, exactly.
Okay. So wow, so that's I figured that one would be sold out, but tickets may come. What's the website they should go to?
ChicagoIdeas.com. You can find all of the tickets in the full lineup there.
All right, and let's talk about this one. Is Ron Sullivan Jr. Talk about Ron Sullivan Jr. When will he be showing up?
I'm especially excited for this. That's October 16th at 12 noon. That is, I believe, the Wednesday of our week. Ron Sullivan Jr. Is a Harvard law professor, but he also previously was a defense attorney for Harvey Weinstein. And he's speaking in a session titled Idea, Who Draws the Line Between Right and Wrong? It's a talk about ethics, misdeeds, and intellectual freedom. And I think his perspective is really, really powerful and unique because it brings to mind this era that we're living in cancel culture. And who is exempt from cancel culture is anyone. And I think Ron Sullivan's story of being a Harvard dean and losing that deanship because of student protests due to his connection to the Harvey Weinstein case, or what is a really interesting. He wrote a powerful op-ed in the New York Times about why he believed that was not the correct choice by Harvard University. So he'll be exploring with us that night, who does draw the line between right and wrong, and where is intellectual freedom, and when is student protest powerful. He talks about in that piece how he has benefited from student protests, being an African-American man, but where's the line?
Cancel culture.
Cancel culture.
Talk about that.
For me, that is just my personal take on it, to be honest. I think cancel culture is quite a buzzword right now, and I think that we're living in the age of digital. We're living in the age where you can tweet opinions and it can change everything. What does that mean? What is that digital discourse? Like, how canceling someone? Who decides? Who decides when your time is up? And that's how I decide cancel culture. Is your time up? Who decides?
Yeah, and I remember when the fallout over Ron Sullivan Jr. and Harvey Weinstein, and I have my own personal opinions about Harvey Weinstein. I think he's a pretty despicable character. I was just actually listening to an interview today with a couple of New York Times journalists who've done a lot of Harvey Weinstein stories. But in our system of justice, he is entitled to a defense. So should we go after a lawyer who is defending Harvey Weinstein? You know what I'm saying? I mean, should that... Well, I guess, freedom of speech means you could protest the lawyer against the lawyer, I suppose.
And Ron Sullivan's piece is, he shares his perspective on that. And I think what's unique about this program is that you're getting to hear him speak.
Yeah. Well, this, by the way, is on my mind these days, and this person will not be here because of Dave Chappelle, the comedian, who just came out with a show on Netflix called Sticks and Stones. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have not watched it.
Okay, I've watched it twice now. And he is getting bombarded from all sides for some of the jokes he does, or some of the anecdotes he does. And some of them I found pretty offensive as well. But I would never say that Dave Chappelle, I would never go so far as to say Dave Chappelle should never have to get to work again because I disagree with some of the things he says. But in his, some of the other stuff he says, I should tell you, this is pretty freaking funny. All right, enough on Chappelle. Liz Phair will be there. Everybody,
yes.
Well, not everybody, but people of a certain age know who Liz Phair is.
Of course.
Talk about Liz Phair.
Well, Liz Phair is not only a musical icon, a rock icon, she's also a feminist icon, and she's coming out with a book called Horror Stories. She will join us on October 15th at 7 p.m. at the Harris Theater for another signature Chicago Ideas talk. Idea, do we have all the answers? This is the talk that people who know us well usually recognize as life's big questions. We invite different thought leaders from different sort of industries and disciplines to explore different questions and to just riff on those things. So Liz, who grew up here in Chicago, will be joining us. Can horror stories heal us? We'll find out.
Can horror stories heal us? What is she going to get into with that?
You'll have to come see that one.
All right.
You'll have to come see. I can't tell you.
All right. I'm writing that down. Can horror stories heal us? They're about to do a new version of Candyman. Speaking of horror stories, they're making it in the city of Chicago. So I'm a big fan of scary movies. So can horror stories heal us? It's October 15th. What time?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. All right. Liz Phair, rock and roll star from the 90s, I want to say. She actually grew up, I want to say, I would say Winnetka or Wilmette, one of those two. I believe she went to New Trier. I'm just doing it off the top of my head.
I love it. You're giving us all the context. Thank you.
Liz Phair went to New Trier. I want to say New Trier High School, which of course is Winnetka, Wilmette, that area. All right. Bethany McLean, talk about that, contributing editor.
Yeah. So Bethany is joining us on the morning of October 14th at 8 a.m. for a live podcast recording.
8 a.m.
Yeah, you're going to want to get up for this one, though. I promise you.
All right.
I promise you. It's an important conversation.
All right.
Her podcast, Making a Killing, which she is the host of, will be recording live. She'll be in conversation with Wall Street Journal editor Ken Brown, who recently penned a piece about America's middle class and how Americans are going into debt to stay in the middle class. And the topic of this conversation is, does America need a middle class? What do you think? We're posing that question to you. And Bethany and Ken will be exploring that on 8 a.m. Monday, October 14th. Join us.
That means I won't go to sleep at all. Okay?
Well, there you go. Pull an all-nighter.
Yeah,
Join us for. It's a really important conversation. I think that people are eager to learn more about this and to hear more about it because it's something that I feel is top of mind for not only Chicagoans but for our entire nation.
Absolutely, and I think the answer to the question is yes. We definitely need a middle class, and I'm constantly talking about to the leaders of Chicago, trying to get them to reconsider some of the policies they do that are driving the middle class out of Chicago, making Chicago unaffordable to the middle class or the working class. So that will be an interesting one. 8 a.m. may have to break all my rules.
I think you do.
And actually get up early.
I think you do.
And then Yusef Salaam will be there. Talk about that.
Yes. So Yusef Salaam is a member of the Exonerated Five, who many may know as the Central Park Five, subject of a recent Netflix series when they see us. He is joining us in a program called IDEA, Resilience is the Secret to Success. And I don't think I need to do much explaining on how Yusuf is an expert in resilience. Being convicted for a crime that you didn't commit and actually serving that time to be exonerated, not to mention the fact that he was a young teen at the time. He'll be joining us to talk about, how do you recover from that? How do you turn that into a resilient story? How do you move on? How do you move forward? I'm really personally so excited for that session. That's October 17th at 12 noon. Another person who will be in that program is local Chicago author Jason Rosenthal. You may know Jason Rosenthal from his work, or you may know him from the piece that his late wife, Amy Krauss Rosenthal, penned in the New York Times just days before she passed from ovarian cancer, called You May Want to Marry My Husband. Yep. Again, she passed a few years ago, and he'll be in that session on resilience as well. So I think it's going to be a really, really well-rounded program, different stories about resilience. I encourage everyone to come out for that one.
Will it be a separate gathers, or will they be on stage together?
They will not be on stage together. This is a talk. So that's a really great question, but I'm glad you keep posing this. So if you go to chicagoideas.com, you'll see us sometimes call things a talk and call things a conversation. Yeah. A talk is, there may be many speakers featured in it, but they will get individual segments, whether it's direct address or they're sitting down for an interview that's moderated. You're getting some personal time, if you will, with that speaker and their ideas. A conversation is what most people would be used to as a panel discussion. So people sitting down on stage exploring an idea together.
And are there moments where there's somebody who goes around the audience with a microphone taking questions from the audience?
Conversations typically have a Q&A feature. Not all in our lineup, but there are opportunities for that in some of our programs.
I got you. So for Yusuf Salam, somebody will be talking with him.
Yusuf Salam, I believe he'll be sitting down for a moderated discussion, but I do not believe there will be Q&A, but we could surprise you. We throw in curveballs all the time, but...
Gotcha. When They See Us, by the way, is a very powerful documentary. It's very difficult to watch. I'm just throwing that out there because...
I haven't been able to watch it.
You haven't.
I'm a little scared for myself to watch it, to be completely honest with you.
Well, the interrogation scenes are painful. I'll just put it that way. And I'm old enough to remember when that went down and Donald Trump's role and all that, when he was a developer, quote unquote, just a developer. And Jason Rosenthal, that Amy Rosenthal piece was very moving. That was in the New York Times.
I remember reading it at my desk when it came. It was in the Modern Love section of the New York Times. Yeah, it was very powerful.
And talk about it a little more.
I mean, she was basically putting in an ad for her husband. She knew she was dying, and she knows how much she loved her husband. And she wanted to make sure that he lived a full life and was loved after her. And it was just a super powerful piece, to which he wrote a response piece. I encourage everyone to Google it. I think to this day, really powerful pieces of writing that will showcase to you just what resilience means.
Yeah, I remember the compassion in her. In the original, I never read his response, so I'm gonna have to go back and read that. But the compassion and understanding in her essay, she, obviously was giving her husband the green light to continue living his life after she had left him, and that's something so many people trip over the notion that you have to be loyal to your wife or your husband when they die for you can't even think about your life afterwards. So I don't know what the statute of limitation is, a year or 2 years. And what she was acknowledging is that a moment will come when you will have to continue living your life.
Right.
And it was a beautiful piece, yes. So that will be, what day is that?
That is October 17th.
Okay, gotcha, October 17th. And then talk about some of the other highlights.
I would love to highlight what's new this year. I think that is what is super exciting to our entire team, but also to our community. And I want to make sure everyone knows, you can still come to Chicago Ideas Week for the thought-provoking programs that you know us for, but we have some new sessions that I think really take us back to our roots of innovation and the entrepreneurial spirit of who we are as an organization. And one of those is a series. It's called Entrepreneurship 101. And every day we'll be hosting a different session with notable entrepreneurs to sort of help you dig in and really learn the fundamental tools for success as a budding entrepreneur yourself. One I'm especially excited for is How to Kill an Idea with Brad Keywell, who happens to be our founder. But I think one of the hardest parts when starting a business or putting an idea out is knowing when it's time to kill an idea and how you test it through and through to make sure that you know that it is in fact time to kill it or to move forward with it. We're also hosting an Entrepreneurship 101 session with David Kalt, who is the CEO of Reverb, who recently sold his organization to Etsy for $275 million. And he'll be leading a session on how to scale your business appropriately. So there are 4 sessions in the week. Again, you can find out more about all of those at chicagoideas.com. But if you're just curious about entrepreneurship, actually in the process of starting a business, are an entrepreneur within a business that is not your own, I encourage you to come out to those. They're going to be awesome. Just $15. It is unheard of to get this type of FaceTime with people of this sort of success for that price.
And 2 sessions that pop out of me when I'm looking at this cheat sheet you gave me for me.
Yeah.
Session on covering the White House in 2019.
Oh, I'm very excited for this. I think that, I love the title of this program, Do Journalists Inform in the Age of Misinformation? It is a session that will focus on covering the White House in 2019. I'm really excited because Joe Lockhart will be joining us. He is the press secretary who served under the Clinton administration. Really super stoked to hear his perspective on this. That's going to be a good one. I think I hope everyone is as excited as I am.
What date is that one? That doesn't say.
That one, I believe, is on Wednesday. Super pumped. Excuse me. It is Tuesday. At 8 a.m.
Tuesday, what date?
October 15th.
October 15th, yeah. Covering the White. Do journalists inform in the age of misinformation? They better. We're really depending on them because there is so much misinformation and out lying going on. And then finally this one, Sessions on the Business of Cannabis. Idea. Who pays to be high? Pretty much everyone. You got to pay to get the stuff. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Yes, we are. We are exploring. We do have a conversation about the business of cannabis. Illinois State Representative Bob Morgan will be joining us. We'll also be joined by Hope Wiseman, who is the nation's youngest Black dispensary owner, founder of Marion, Maine. She'll be joining us. Yeah, that's going to be a great one. I think obviously very timely.
Yeah, it'll be timely because starting January 1st, recreational marijuana will be legal in the state of Illinois. If you haven't heard the word, folks, it'll be legal in the state of Illinois. It's been practically legal for many years for people of the Caucasian persuasion. But now it's going to be legal for everyone. So lots of good stuff. Chicago Ideas Week. One more time, Vanessa, where can folks go to get more information, get the dates and the speakers, that kind of thing?
Yes, chicagoideas.com. You cannot miss the information there. General access is available now, so that means everyone can get their tickets. I encourage everyone to come and check it out. It's going to be an amazing, exciting week. We are kicking off on a Saturday night for the first time in the history of our organization in a program called Creativity is Power. We will be joined by trailblazing filmmaker David Lynch, super excited, but also local figures like Eve Ewing and Hebrew Brantley. It's going to be a really, I'm calling this one Park Talk, Part Celebration. I think it's going to be an energetic kickoff to the week.
All right, beautiful. Thank you so much for coming in, Vanessa. I appreciate it. We'll probably talking about Ideas Week as we get closer to October 12th. I got Lavonte Stewart coming on. We're going to bring him on right after this.
Attention Chicago innovators and creators, 2019 Chicago Ideas Week is coming soon. October 12th through the 17th, this annual Ideas Festival is back, and it's the largest, most affordable Ideas Festival of its kind. They bring in hundreds of thought leaders from around the globe and some local to share ideas and spark action all across Chicago. To get a better idea of what to expect, here's a bit of audio from last year's Chicago Ideas Week with special guest and Chicago comedian Hannibal Buress.
The real reason I came home is just because I was traveling a lot anyway. I wasn't in New York that much, and I don't have a full-time job in New York. I work a lot, but I'm not in New York, so it was just like I don't need to be here anymore. And also I just wanted to work on different stuff here in Chicago. So I have this center that I'm working on the west side, Melvina Masterminds. It's going to be arts and then a tech program and after school programming for kids in the North Austin area. So just wanted to be back. There we go.
October 12th through the 17th, it's 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Tickets go on sale to members on August 22nd and to general public September 10th. Once again, if you're an innovator or creator in the city of Chicago or even outside the city, you must join us for Chicago Ideas Week, October 12th through the 17th. For tickets and event information, head to chicagoideas.com. That's chicagoideas.com, and we hope to see you October 12th through the 17th.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Nick Confessori's with us from New York Times. Has a question for you, Nick.
Hey, Mary. So I want to ask you to put on your old hat for a second as chairman of the DCCC and a House strategist.
You know, every time I hear that, I'm hearing like that's a yarmulke or
that's
something
right.
like
Well,
that.
this is what I want to ask you.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. They're located at 6241 North Broadway in Chicago. And people, trust me when I say this, they're amazing. Oh my goodness. Books, lamps, antiques, maybe clothes. I'm seeing a lot of books right now at greenelementresale.com. They got board games. What else? I'm looking around. Oh, furniture, beds, mattresses. Green Element Resale, people. It's amazing. 6241 North Broadway in Chicago. You can find more information at greenelementresale.com Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until 7 p.m. Sunday, 12 until 7 p.m. If you're ever on Broadway between Granville and Devon, stop into Green Element Resale and tell them thank you, because they are the only thrift shop that helps bring you the Ben Joravsky Show, and we appreciate it. It's Green Element Resale. Go there and save tons of money, money, money. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Lavonte Stewart in the studio before we bring him on. What you got for me, D?
Well, we have some updates here. First off, we are now live streaming on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page. If you're watching on Facebook, you missed the first half hour of the show. And what a first half hour it was. We made fun of Rahm Emanuel and his appearance on ABC over the weekend. Ben, what was your quick overview of that?
What a joke.
What a joke.
Why anybody in the Democratic Party listens to Rahm Emanuel anymore, I do not know. Why they ever listen to him, I do not know. But especially now. And he's pals with Chris Christie. That says everything you need to know.
They're buddies. They're big-time buddies.
I love you, Chris. I love you, Rahm.
Also in the first half hour, I think I may have stumbled upon a conspiracy involving the Illinois State Fair butter cow.
It's the butter cow, which has 9 hearts to represent the 9 essential nutrients in milk. That's right. It's made entirely out of butter, and it's a state fair tradition since at least 1922.
1922.
And Ben talked about his dryer not working. It was a fantastic first half hour, and you can go find it once the show is over. You can download it at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download podcasts. And speaking of the Facebook page, people, we are so close from having our next caption contest on the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page. We have been patiently waiting to hit 2,000 likes on the page before our next caption contest. And right now, on the page, we are at 1,970. That's how many likes we have. 30 more, and we will have our next caption contest. So if you're listening to this right now and you've yet to like the Ben Joravsky Show on Facebook, today's the day. Take the dive. At Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, JORAV as in victory, SKY. Head over to the page, give us a like, follow, share, review, tell us we suck, whatever you want to do. Just give us a like, and when we hit 2,000, we will have our next caption contest. And Ben, it's going to be a Lori Lightfoot caption contest.
Mayor Lightfoot.
Whoa.
Okay, Mayor Lightfoot. All right.
So head over to the page, tell your friends, share along. We'll wait till we get 2,000.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. Lavonte Stewart is my guest. And Lavonte, welcome to the show. Appreciate you being here.
Ben, thanks for having me. Huge fan.
And, we have a friend in common, young Danny Pogoshelski, is saying, you got to have Lavonte on, you got to have Lavonte on. So let's just start with a basic disclaimer before we go any further, because I know you have a lot of thoughts that you want to talk about. You want to tell about your past and talk about your ideas about criminal justice and some of the issues of the day. But you also have a day job. So let's just get that disclaimer out here.
Absolutely, Ben. So full disclaimer. I work in state government. I work for the Illinois State Treasurer Michael Frerich's office, Civic Engagement Division. None of the views and the opinions that I share today are reflective of that office. I'm here as an individual. These are my opinions and my views. As well, I'm the founding executive director of Lost Boys, Inc., which is an award-winning Southside not-for-profit using sports-based youth development as a tool for violence prevention and youth development.
All right, very good.
Again, not representing that organization with my views.
Right, and it's an important point. I encourage people to come on my show, speak their minds, and I have a lot of great guests that are regular routine people. They speak from their heart. They say what's on their minds. Sometimes some of them get politically incorrect. I'm not saying you will be that way, but some do. And I just would hate to think that anybody would be punished in any way for coming on and just expressing their First Amendment protected rights of free speech in this country. So anyway, that is the point. All right, Lavonte, just let's introduce yourself. This is the first time you're on the show. Tell folks a little bit about your past. You're from Chicago originally?
Yes, born and raised in South Shore. Woo woo. Went to school, Catholic school, got kicked out of De La Salle, ended up in the public schools.
Now, how'd you get kicked out of De La Salle?
So I think I still hold the record for the most detentions, Ben.
Wow, that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah. Whether it was no tie, whether it was being late, whatever it was.
Now, what years was this where you were at De La Salle?
So 89 to 91.
Okay, so you're a 90s kid.
Yeah.
So what was it? Your parents wanted you to get that Catholic education, that structure, and you just were a rebellious kid? Is that it?
Well, a little bit of a knucklehead. So my mother and our grandmother raised us as Roman Catholic, so grew up going to Our Lady of Peace. All my siblings, we all went to Catholic high schools, college. Well, I went to Catholic college, but so it was kind of a tradition. She thought that we could get a higher quality of education there, and so as consumers, my parents put education as a priority, so that's where they put their money in their children. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, just I was the oldest and probably the knucklehead that made all the mistakes, so my little brother and my little sister wouldn't, and they've done excellent for themselves, Ivy League graduates, etc.
Well, so De La Salle, I got to tell you this now, there's a huge generation gap between the two of us. You're much younger than I am. But when I was a kid, De La Salle was a school that was predominantly white. It was associated with Bridgeport and the Dailies, because all the Dailies went there. The Baby Daly, who was the mayor of the city of Chicago, his brother Bill went there, the Daddy Daly went there. And I was shocked to learn that somewhere, I don't know when, in the 80s and 90s, black people started going to De La Salle. And the world has changed from when I was a little kid.
Well, now they had girls, right? I don't know if it's still co-ed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I came at a very interesting time to De La Salle. So I probably didn't recognize any kind of issues that were revolving around race being so young, if I had those experiences. But the ones I do recall was there was an unwritten rule. The black kids didn't go into the Viaduct West towards Comiskey Park because that's Bridgeport, and you'd get run back out of there. And the white kids didn't come east of the Viaduct because Stateway Gardens, the projects were still there, so they didn't come on that side. So it became kind of a dividing ground, which I think Daddy Daly intended anyway when he created the expressway.
Yeah. Wow. What a great Chicago, my hometown.
That's
man. Right. Black people don't go west. White people don't go east. And you can all meet at De La Salle and sit on opposite sides of the cafeteria. God willing, a black kid and a white kid sit at the same table in the cafeteria. That'll probably explode. So anyway, you were rebellious. You didn't wear your tie. They kicked you out of school eventually. Is that basically how it went down?
Yeah, eventually.
And so the public schools had to take you. And I always say this to people who say, well, the Catholic schools are the way to go. And I think they do a lot of great work. But bottom line is they could kick the Lavonte Stewarts out when they don't wear their tie. And guess what? The Chicago public schools got to take you in with open arms.
Oh, man, a totally different environment when I get there. It was like night and day.
So what school did you...
So I ended up going to South Shore because no other Catholic school would take me at that time. So Mom is kind of stressed out. We're looking around. It's in the middle of the school year. I'm a junior by the time this all happened. So I'm trying to wrap things up. And so I ended up having to go to my neighborhood school. And if you can recall, in that time frame, 91 or so, South Shore was horrible. It's not the new international multi-million-dollar school that we advocated for years, thanks to the leading of people like Dr. Carol Adams and the late Henry English. So, oh man, it was like that movie with East Side High or something, right? So it was like, oh
what
my
movie
God.
was that?
Morgan
I know the
Freeman, Mr.
Lean
Parker.
on Me.
Lean on Me.
You lean on very good.
Mr. Parker.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman, yeah.
It was, but I love my days at South Shore, and I think around that time frame, you know, there was just a lot going on with the park and the school, so it was, oh my God.
And so did you make it through there, or did you end up at another school?
No, gangs and stuff that I got myself into, I had to get out of there before I got killed. Got surrounded at a football practice. I had every gang imaginable there, and the football coach wouldn't give me a ride home, which fast forward is an impetus for part of why I started the organization that I started, Lost Boys, Inc. And so after that, I never returned. I told Mom I can't go back or you'll be burying me, and transferred over to Hirsch and graduated there.
So you were relatively safe at Hirsch.
Yeah.
So what was the route before between that moment when you were you finally went to 3 different schools to where you are now, where you're working, you got a job with state government, you have a foundation that you run, and you're on this show talking about greater issues. What did the road take you through? What travels did you have?
Oh man, Ben, I've been through some stuff. So in that process from high school till now, there's been a 4-year prison bid. There's been, ups and downs trying to find work, completing my education, got all of that stuff done. And then really what opened the door for me for government was an opportunity to work for then State Senator Kwame Raoul, which I will always greatly appreciate him, now Attorney General, because at the time he didn't make a judgment about me because I was an ex-offender. But what he did was talk to the elders in the community who were working with me while I was working at the Black United Fund for Henry English, and I helped with the help of David Robinson. We created an outreach program called MASH, making a lot of happen.
Yeah.
And so we were very similar to like Ceasefire, except the difference was we brought resources to the table. So not only did we come to hotspots and talk to people after there was some shooting or some violent situation, we had access to resources. We had access to jobs, to programs for young adults, for youth, for seniors, for whomever. So that was kind of a driving force that made the difference, right? Because the biggest thing of it is you can't tell somebody to put their guns and drugs down and don't have anything to replace it, especially when some of this stuff is misunderstood, and it's what I call crimes of economic deprivation.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is this. If I apply for 20 different jobs, and I really need a job, and I've got children or whatever, and I can't land a job, I'm going to have to find a way to take care of myself. A long time ago, the government removed general assistance for men, so there's no way to get money in terms of public assistance. You can get some food stamps maybe. Can't get unemployment if you haven't worked. So where am I going to get a source of income? Oh, crack, weed. This stuff sells. You make quick money. So now people sometimes make decisions to help themselves, but it's the wrong decision. And then in America, the way that everyone has been criminalized around it, especially people of color, specifically black men, it's mind-boggling. And if you just think back about that whole campaign in the 80s, I was a kid, right? And we had Nancy Reagan on TV all the time. Just say no. Yeah. The hell if it was that easy, just say no. There's a lot of factors that weren't discussed that went into that process.
By the way, I have to say this, and I'm talking about it a lot. I can't get it off my mind. Dave Chappelle, I've seen it twice. I know a lot of my friends are really mad at me because I've been speaking so much of it, but he has a bit in there about just say no that is so right on time. Have you seen it?
I did.
Where he talks about the attitude that the Nancy Reagans and Ronald Reagans and the powers that be had about black people when they were hooked on crack. Just say no, or we're going to throw you in jail. And the attitudes they have about white people who are hooked on heroin and opioids in the 2018. And the different attitudes. Talk about.
Well, I mean, there's truth in that, and that's why we need comedy, right? Yeah, I know a lot of people made this show very controversial, but here's what I think. One, about comedy. We need comics because comics open up the door for conversation between different parties that view things differently, because if you can laugh about something, then you can talk about it. It takes away the tension. So I like the whole bit on that. I like the bit on that he did with LGBTQT, and I've talked to some of my friends who are from that group.
L or G or B.
But what it does, it normalizes them. And it brings them in the regular conversation like the regular people that they are, instead of us ostracizing and isolating people. And so when we take that perspective and we look at the fake war on drugs from Nixon on down, that is exactly the same situation. It demonized black folks. And then for us, we were able to make light of it through comedy. Right? And to really come to the table and to ourselves and talk about it. Well, now it's coming to an end. We're fast forwarding. Nobody in my generation, not many, are smoking crack. Millennials ain't smoking crack, so that's getting ready to kind of fall off the table, right? We step back and like characters like his Tyrone Biggums, nobody wants to be that character, right? And so those were some of the characteristics of crackheads. So it's kind of a dying thing. But in that process, black people, especially men, were demonized in such a way. In retrospect, thinking about it as a kid now, you grew up loving cops, right? Because you grew up in this country believing in good, believing in heroes like the police. So watching cops was natural. But then it dawned on me later in life, I'm looking at reruns and I'm like, is every suspect black?
Are you talking about the TV show Cops?
97% of these people are black men, and they're chasing them and they're beating the hell out of them for 5 bags of crack cocaine. When, not saying I want to see that legalized, but eventually we move on these substances in a way where some of this stuff gets legalized, like prohibition, right? We moved away from that. The religious side of things were probably on Americans at the time who were pro-alcohol. And, it was the work of the devil, the tool of the devil. Everything is always the tool of the devil when they don't agree. And so fast forward. Who's thinking about prohibition now? I mean, I'd love to leave here and get a beer with you after this, right? We're not going to demonize it. Demonize being in Lavonte because they're sitting at the bar having a beer. Just like in the next 5 years, we're not going to demonize a person if they're standing on the corner smoking a joint.
Actually, it's still, just so our listeners know, it still won't be legal to smoke it, as far as I know, on the corner. You still have to go inside. I think that's the state law. You can't smoke it. Not that anybody is following that right now.
I was going to say, I'll test it out in January and see if it works.
You could just test it out tonight and see what happens. But now, when you were a kid, was there ever a moment when you wanted to be a cop? Like when you looked up as a kid growing up on the south side of Chicago, did you ever have a moment when you said, I want to be a police officer?
I was infatuated with underdog. I wanted to be underdog. But the next best thing was I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. So I did really well on the ASVAB test in high school, and they were knocking down the door. But Mom wouldn't let me go to the military because my dad had served in Vietnam. So just bad experiences with that. But no, I had a very patriotic heart, always a heart for people, compassion, caring. So I always wanted to be the good guy, whatever form that took. I probably gave policing a thought, but after my experiences as a teen and as a young adult, that quickly went out the window.
Well, how did you get caught up? What did you go to jail for?
Interesting. Well, I was actually away at college. I was attending Missouri Valley College, which is in Marshall, Missouri, wedged right in the middle between Kansas City and St. Louis. I was there on an academic and a double athletic scholarship, football and baseball. I had actually got kicked out of Hampton, academically, Hampton University, which is coming to town Saturday, because I was really focused on playing football. I was the littlest guy on the team. I was a corner, lockdown corner, baby.
God, this is not a big man. I would not have
5'7", about 160 pounds. But under Joe Taylor, who was the coach then, and Donovan Rose, who at some point has been the head coach there, I learned a lot. And I played with a lot of great players. I played against people like Steve McNair at Alcorn State during those years. So it was, it was really interesting
Tennessee
time. Yeah, and so even a couple of my teammates ended up going to the league. But I was so focused on sports, I forgot about grades. So I ended up fast forward in Missouri, going to this really small NAIA college, and there's something about Chicagoans that makes us stand out different from anybody else. And then there's this other unique experience for black Chicagoans when we're outside this city. We know each other. We can recognize each other the moment we open our mouth. Sometimes we don't even have to open our mouth, right? So, but part of it is this toxicity, this masculine toxicity that we take with us, and I think is akin to the gang culture that we grew up in, and just this tough environment, probably like New Yorkers. So there was a lot of baggage I carried with me at 18, 19 years old, going away off to college. I wasn't a really responsible kid. I was just trying to play sports, chase girls. Grades, academics came easy. Well, anyway, I got into a situation helping out a young lady that was a friend there. She had gotten to a situation that was quite racial. A couple of young boys, white boys, had chasing her, calling her niggers. And so she came and got me, and I went to respond with her and go talk to the people, talk to the parents, whomever. And as we were approaching the house, and maybe because it was about 5 of us, the father came out, and the boys were behind the dad, and he pulled out a firearm and used some explicitives and, told me to get my something off of his property. So at that point, internally, I kind of snapped. I hadn't had all of these experiences with racism in such a way that was very blatant, except that time. So I went home and I got a rifle that I bought from Walmart, and had someone drive me back around there, and I just wanted to scare them. So I rode past their house and shot in the air a couple of times, and all of a sudden I became this notorious drive-by shooter in all of their news outlets and media. And the next thing I know, I turned myself in. I could have absconded and ran back to Chicago, but my grandma said, "Nah, just go face it. It's not nothing big. It'll probably be an unlawful use of a weapon." Yeah, they tried to charge me with 60 years to life. So I ended up finally, even though my mom put her house up, bought a lawyer down there, the courts weren't listening to him, we ended up taking a plea deal, which is one of the big issues in the black community when it comes to the criminal justice system. So I took a plea deal that ended up in total giving me 10 years. First offense, nobody hurt, no damage, and I did 4 years mandatory minimum on that gun possession.
Whoa, I can't. Yeah. You did 4 years for shooting a gun in the air.
I did.
In the state of Missouri?
In the state of Missouri.
That is no joke. How did you get through that 4 years? You were in,
Well, so the first 2 started off kind of rough, right? I was assimilating to the prison culture. Again, I'm used to Chicago's gang culture. The streets wasn't something new to me.
Yeah.
But I believe by faith, God has a way of working with us. And maybe that was a moment that needed to happen in my life for all of these things that are happening now in my life, for me to become a strong advocate for ex-offenders, for criminal justice reform, for youth and violence. So I think it was one of those necessary things that had to happen. But there were 2, I'll never forget, Dan Como and Nathan Saucier, 2 white boys that were locals from there that had been incarcerated for something, nonviolent. And they befriended me. And so we came really close, and they were working on computers in the campus. So they started teaching me how to fix computers, how to program
while you were
code.
in prison.
Yeah, they worked for the institutional activities coordinator. So they got me a job. So now I had all this freedom, and I was walking around campus fixing computers and learning how to write code like Pascal, Unix, C, and all of these things.
When you talk about walking around the campus, you're referring to...
We had different movement, the prison campus itself. So because we were workers and we worked for this institutional activities coordinator, we kind of got special privileges. We ate outside food often. We did a lot of stuff. We coordinated activities like picture days, food ordering days. I helped build sports programs in that prison. I also helped build a concept called therapeutic communities, which were about people who wanted to live their terms out peacefully. So we isolated housing units, brought in local colleges, and we had all kind of coursework, and everything was set in families. Everybody was grouped in families. It was all positive vibes only. One fight and you get kicked out of there. Well, later they took that model and applied it across the whole Missouri Department of Corrections. Of course, my name came off the manual, right? You don't give credit to an inmate.
Yeah.
But that was my experience. So God really carried me through the last 2 years and tooled me and equipped me with some things that are necessary for me to do the work that I'm doing now.
And so you came back to Chicago after that.
Yeah, but it wasn't bright, Ben. It was still rough. Now I'm an ex-offender trying to get a job.
Yeah.
Trying to finish school. And so I was able to do that. Got my bachelor's degree from
Living
Chicago
here
State.
In Chicago,
yes,
on the south
followed
side.
my mother. My mother's alma mater. She's a teacher. She graduated from there. So I got my bachelor's in computer science. And I was really good in math. And so then I began to pursue my master's degree there. But all that time, here I am with these nice degrees, a black guy that knows how to write 4 different programming languages, and I couldn't get a job. The closest I got was AT&T. They were going to offer me a programming job. Then they ran my background and they rescinded the offer.
Wow. So when you're in a situation like that, and you does it work to just be completely upfront and say to the person, the employer who's interviewing, I did 4 years in Missouri, I could tell you all about it just the way you told about it now? Or do they advise you, do counselors advise you just not to talk about it and hope that it doesn't come up?
Well, so I have 2 opinions on that. One, back then and maybe even now, I would say it's right? You're usually quickly eliminated from the pool of potential candidates. But because I'm a very forthcoming person and my life is an open book, I tell it all the time now when I'm talking with people or having that conversation. But yeah, as far as trying to get into the workforce, no. And people wonder why ex-offenders didn't like to check the box. Your application got threw out as soon as you checked that box. But thanks to like state government here over the years, I think it was LaShawn Ford, State Rep LaShawn Ford, good friend, who did a real big push for the ban the box piece. So that was, it's not the great equalizer, but it was a positive step forward.
Ban the box means do not have that little checkoff box that says, have you ever
been convicted of a felony?
Right.
And that's a conversation that can happen later during the interview portion or when they're almost ready to make an offer. So that's the way ex-offenders, we had began to kind of train our brains, was to try to keep that information under wraps until you get really close to getting the job. But then there's a conundrum there, because if you lie on the application and you get hired and they find out later that you're an ex-offender, you can be fired for lying about it on the initial application.
So you're damned if you do and you're
damned if you don't. Absolutely.
And the real issue is how to confront the bias that people would have against anybody who has done time.
Exactly. And that's part of it, Ben, is as a society, we're making progress about how we view people who have that kind of criminal history in their background, that we can't judge a book by its cover. Here I was, a kid, 2-parent household, upper middle class Chicago, just did some really stupid stuff, very intelligent, matriculating at some of the best schools, and I couldn't get a job. I couldn't sweep a floor.
Really, who came through for you is Kwame Raoul.
Henry English at the Black United Fund and Kwame Raoul. That's who really came through for me.
So when you hear this ongoing debate that we're having right now between Lori Lightfoot and Tony Preckwinkle over the whole issue of bail and bond, and I sent you the article, the column that John Cass wrote for the Chicago Tribune, where he was essentially saying that the reason there's so much crime in Chicago is that lenient judges are allowing violent offenders out too easily and are not holding them up and protecting the communities. What's your attitude about that debate?
John should be careful about the things he puts out there. I don't know how much he researched that, and he cites in that article at least 2 stories where he tries to use that as evidence to support his claim. I would totally disagree. I have not walked in a courtroom where the judges are just so nice and they say, oh, you had a gun. Oh, you shot at somebody. Oh, I'm going to slap you on the wrist and give you a band on your ankle or give you a low bond and send you home. No. What I think the intent of that is to target people who have committed non-violent offenses. Someone who's sitting in there because they got caught with that bag of rocks or that bag of weed. You know, we want to get those people back out into their normal life, right? They may have a job, they've got children, whatever it is. We, kind of get people back to that sense of normalcy if they're kind of a lower level offender. Yeah, definitely people who are using weapons to hurt someone or whatever it is, yeah, we need to hold them tighter and closer. So I totally disagree, though, that judges are just, letting people out by the flocks. That is not the intent of it anyway. It is, again, to go after the lower level offenders where we're wasting taxpayers' money housing people in there because it can cost us a ton of money, definitely over $20,000 per inmate or per person being detained, whether it's the county or the prison system.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on that one, and it has become very politicized, Lavonte.
Oh yeah,
I know you don't need me to tell you this, but I'm watching this fight coming out. It's being politicized against Kim Foxx, and she's running for re-election.
Yeah.
By the way, another thing Chappelle does pretty funny is the take on Jussie Smollett.
In
that
Juicy Smollett.
Juicy Smollett, the French actor. That's very funny. But it's funny when Dave Chappelle does it.
Yeah.
But it's it is kind of almost funny in a bittersweet way. The way that is being turned against the whole criminal justice reform movement. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Justice Smollett is destroying a lot of people with his
absolutely.
antics because he's become the poster man against criminal justice reform. And a lot of people are going to pay the price for his knuckleheadedness.
Absolutely. But if we can have a moment of candid talk, Ben, if you pull the veil back on America, this isn't nothing new. This is from the same playbook of how you demonize, especially black people.
Mm-hmm.
In progress, it only takes one person to mess up, and then the adage is, "See, told you so." I mean, we can go back to Reconstruction period when we were making all of these gains, and there were other politicians who would say, "Oh no, they're crooks, they're corrupt, they're stealing money, they're doing this, they're lazy, they're this," and there was never any evidence showing these new congressional members were corrupt and were stealing, and so it was just a way of unleashing backlash because of this progress that had made. And so this is the same case here. I think that Kim Foxx is a breath of fresh air for Chicago, that we need a new set of eyes on how we prosecute and what we prosecute, because again, we're talking about the taxpayers' dime at the end of the day. And we got to think about the systems that are receiving that money and how they're utilizing that money. It's a business at the end of the day. So some people are all for it because it keeps their business going. So we have to look at that. But I think with Jussie, for example, I'm not saying he shouldn't be accountable. Absolutely. Am I pissed at Jussie Smollett for what he pulled off? Absolutely. But should we continue to sink taxpayer money trying to prosecute him? What do we get out of it, Ben?
Oh, no. Don't get me wrong.
I know.
I'm not for it.
If we stick Jussie in jail, what do we get? And how many thousands of dollars do we waste?
No, put him into real community service. I mean, not real community, not just like giving one talk.
Jussie can come down to Lost Boys and volunteer any given day.
There you go.
We love it.
Teach singing lessons. So it's just like, I mean, it's not a black man I'm about to allude to. I don't understand why Rod Blagojevich is still in prison.
I agree.
I mean, I just put him to use. He's got a lot of skills. He can
I agree.
You could use him at the Lost Boys. He could teach oratory lessons or something, speaking lessons, or his figures from the past, something.
I actually really liked Rod during the time. I think that as governor, he helped us, black folks. There were a lot of things he put in place that were very beneficial for us.
Well, I got to say, you are one of the few people I've ever heard who had the guts to say what you just said. Quote, I really liked him.
I liked him.
Yeah. I did not get along. I'm just going to put it out there. I did not get along with the man, and he did not get along with me, but way too long in prison.
I definitely agree.
Long in prison. Absolutely. Now, let's talk a little bit about Lost Boys. What's it called? Lost Boys?
Yep.
And how you use sports. This is one of my passions in life. Everybody knows I'm a huge sports fan. And by the way, he played football. I don't know, is it just me? But isn't it possible if the Chicago Bears just once in their life can have a decent quarterback and a kicker?
Oh, my God.
I'm just throwing that out there, man. Okay.
Oh, my God.
And you're talking about it, so let's just mention it real quick. The team at the Sun-Times, we're going to do a live read right now.
A live read.
Yeah. We just got one more ad to play here. Let's see here. The team at the Sun-Times have a new podcast to add to the listening lineup. That's right. We have Neighbors, Ben. podcast neighbors.
Yes, we do.
This football season, get the inside scoop on the Chicago Bears with Hallis Intrigue. It's the latest podcast from the Chicago Sun-Times. Tune in to hear Sun-Times sports reporters and Bears experts, including Patrick Finley.
Yeah. Patrick Finley.
These names, I'll get it eventually.
Sports writer for
a
Chicago
bunch of
Sun-Times.
sports writers, all right? They provide insights and
Rick
analyze.
Morrissey, Rick Tellender.
Oh, my God. They're all there partying. They give you insights and analyze the day's big stories. Stay informed this football season. Listen to Hallis Intrigue at suntimes.com/Hallis. And be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Once again, suntimes.com/HALA. S is in Sam. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Good job, Dr. D. All right, the Bears suck. Let's just get
I ain't going to give up on Mitch yet.
There were at least 3 other quarterbacks they could have taken. They should have taken. You know it. I know it. Let's stop ducking and dodging. We shouldn't have traded up for him. You know it. I know it. Let's stop ducking and dodging. Man, can you imagine if I had a sports podcast? Good God, Lavonte.
Could have got Patrick Mahomes. Could have got Deshaun Watson.
Oh, did you see Deshaun Watson last night? You see those passes he threw? Laser beam.
Hell, I hope half your viewers don't get mad at me, but hell, we could have took cap off of unemployment and put them back in.
Well, first of all, I've been saying that for 3 years right now. Right now, Colin Kaepernick can walk out on the field, definitely be better than the Bears' backup. So, thank you, Robert Mueller. All right, I'm going to stop railing and railing about the Chicago Bears. A lifelong Bear fan.
Me too.
That game last Thursday is still painful for me to think about. Talk about Lost Boys.
Yes. So this is a passion project, or more than a project. It's really my life. It's what I believe is my calling, my main calling. So about 10 years ago, started the organization in response to kind of the spike in violence that I was seeing around. By this time, I'm a father now. I was volunteer coaching for a little league that had resurfaced in my community, South Shore Little League. It had disappeared for like 20 years. Everybody in South Shore before that played for Dennis Bonebreaker, but he was gone and the league was gone. So this other guy came along, Daniel Anderson. He revived it. I came in and coached the first year, 11 and 12-year-old team, won the championship. I was hooked as a coach after that, stuck around for a couple of years, and then he dissolved it for some reason. So I'm in Rosenbloom Park in South Shore on a beautiful summer afternoon because, again, it's hard for an ex-offender to get a job. So I'm coaching the team, 2:30, and we have this really traumatic incident where it's 2 guys we see chasing another guy. And I'm getting ready to tell these kids that the league is folded and I'm going to send them to Jackie Robinson West, over to Bill, or to Southside, to Chris Dorsey and those guys, or Eastside. And 2 guys are chasing another guy, gun out. I'm old school. I hit the dirt. These other kids are like standing around, laughing, taking bets to see if he's going to get them. And so at that moment, I was overwhelmed with how desensitized the kids were to violence. At the end of the day, they were still kids, children. Yeah. But they've seen this over and over and over so much that it's just part of life. And it shouldn't be. It should not be normal. It was normalized. So in response to that, it really touched my soul. And I started thinking about reflecting on my own childhood. And I mentioned at the top of the show how my football coach, you, Coach Brown, implant from the South, Mississippi somewhere, he coached football at South Shore. And I told him one day, hey, these guys are getting ready to jump on me. Can you take me home? Oh, boy, you're going to be all right. And he pulled off, left me in the smoke, and smoke cleared, and there's like 20 gangbangers waiting to jump on me. So that never left me, that man left me, and I could have died. So from that point on, I wanted to stand in the gap for kids. I didn't want that to happen to another kid. So that's why I started it. But then I found that I found something, right? Using baseball, even though I love football, baseball, and I wrestled at De La Salle. Did really well, actually. There's nothing like baseball. Baseball is so unique to our country, to our history, to the American story. To me, I tell everyone, the beginning of integration started with baseball. Jackie Robinson, and guys even before Jackie, but that era of it opened the door for integration, for us to kind of come together. I tell people all the time, there's no better place than a ball field where you can come and you can be, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, rich, poor, educated, uneducated. For 3 hours, you can be the best of friends with whoever because you're cheering for the same team. And so, it had this historical significance and impact on our country. So I wanted to use that as ground zero. And it's just a fun sport. So, starting with the sport, we hook them there. And the motto is called sports-based youth development, the theory. And so using sports and mentors, we place kids on positive trajectories in life through mutually beneficial relationships. So we also deliver civic engagement, academic enrichment, so tutoring, college prep, ACT prep, helping them select a college for our older teens and kids. There's cultural awareness. Chicago is so segregated, so many homogenous communities. So one of the things I found in taking them out to dinners in other communities was they didn't know how to receive those communities. So opening it up with cultural awareness, we started venturing out to partner with other organizations, institutions, whether it's churches, whether it's youth groups, and expose them to other cultures that exist in their city so that they can build their network. So we've been to the Jewish Youth Center, we've been to the synagogue. They've learned things about Jewish religion. They've learned things and spent time with Jewish youth and got to play soccer together and just talk. We've been up to, she's gonna keep me, I can't remember the name of the organization, Madonna's Mission, I think it is. It's kind of north on Sheridan. And so they help women who are immigrants, refugee immigrants with children. And so we were able to go up there and partner with them, our girls, because we brought in girls fast pitch softball 6 years ago. You didn't see black girls playing softball. So now at Lost Boys, you can find 50, 60 girls out there playing softball, and they're now playing baseball.
Good.
But yeah, so
girls
stuff
can play
like
baseball
that.
too.
Civic engagement, making sure that they understand, because you start talking to kids and you say, well, who's the mayor? Rahm Emanuel. Who's the governor? I don't know. Who's the president at this time? Barack Obama. Who's the attorney general? I don't know. Who's this? I don't know. Who's that? I don't know. What do you know about this issue? What do you know about that issue? So there's a lot of lack of knowledge. So civic engagement became a really big piece. And I'll tell you a success really shortly how we used it for a couple of years. We were able to mend our relationships with Chicago Police Department, 3rd and 4th District, thanks to those wonderful commanders. Big shout out to Noel Sanchez, who's promoted now down at 35th Michigan. But we're able to come together and have raw conversations, right? And this is kind of before everybody else started doing this. And the cops will sit down with the kids, we role play, we do the whole nine so that we understand each other. It continued on without my help. These cops out of our district, 3 and 4, started visiting these children, dropping them off school supplies, whatever they thought they needed. And they knew the cops' names, and the cops knew our kids' names. And that relationship is still upheld to the day. We work very closely with the police in those 2 districts. So we've improved, at least the kids in our program, their relationship, their outlook towards cops. At the beginning, it was like, hey, F the police. And you understood why. And now it's not the same. They don't necessarily feel that way.
And so what age range do you have of these kids?
So we go from 4 up to about 21 or so.
21?
Yeah, so we have a second program. It's a continuum of service. It's called Successful Youth Leaders. So all we do is we take out the component of playing sports, because they're more likely playing high school, baseball, or college, and we replace it with workforce development. So we introduce them to the workforce, especially if they haven't worked. So some of these kids end up making $13, $14 an hour with us. Their checks are $700, $800 every 2 weeks. They also have to mentor the younger kids. They have their own civic engagement. They have financial literacy that they're involved in. They have community service projects they have to do, and they go back into one of 4 industries around baseball. They either become an umpire, they become a sports journalist slash statistician. They become a grounds crew member, and they learn how to take care of the fields and the indoor facility. Or they become coaches, junior coaches.
What park do you work out of?
So we're out of Rosenblum Park, and we've served South Shore and South Chicago our whole time. We've just expanded this fall, so we're really happy to announce that we're going into Pilsen and Humboldt Park, so that we can also reach out and serve Hispanic children.
I gotcha. And that may explain that text you erroneously sent to me about coaches in Pilsen. I didn't get it. Lavonte Stewart is my guest. We're running out of time, so I'm going to have to close the show. And I'm going to bring you back. We'll talk more politics when you come back. But I just wanted to introduce you to people and tell your story and what you're all about and the good work that you're doing with Lost Boys.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me on today. Thank you, Dan Pogaszewski.
Yeah, Daddy P. He was the one who brought us together. I also want to thank Vanessa Buenger from Chicago Ideas. We're going to try to get some of these people that are coming for the Chicago Ideas to be on the show. I would love to get Ron Sullivan on the show, hear what he has to say. Yep. And Maya, earlier in the show.
I was going to say, is there a website or anything? Where
people if they want to learn more, they can go to www.lostboys.org. And we're on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
B-O-Y-Z.
Yes, with a Z.
B-O-Y-Z. Dennis, that is Dr. D behind the boards, and he knows his radio podcasting stuff. He was the one who remembered, get the info, and that was a good one. Thank you very much, Dennis. Dr. D, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. He does a great job every day on the Ben Joravsky Show.
Listen to this, huh? Listen to this part.
Yeah, and Lavonte, you know what they call him back home in Alton, do you?
What?
They call him White Lightning. Yes, indeed. Because he's so fast.
I love it.
Keep yourself a raise, Dr. D. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
Hey, and remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, or wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Downloaders, we live stream this show. It's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel, and Facebook Live. Just search for BENNY, the letter J Show, JORAV as in victory, SKY. If you've yet to like the page, go do it. When we hit 2,000, we'll have a Lori Lightfoot caption contest. We'll see you tomorrow.